see he's got his headset on.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to East Gippsland Shire Council's meeting on this day, Tuesday, the 15th of April 2025. East Gippsland Shire Council live streams, records and publishes its meetings via webcasting. These recordings are available for viewing by the public by following the link on Council's website. During the meeting, any members of the public who are addressing the Council will have their image and comments recorded. No other person has the right to record Council meetings unless approval has been granted by the Chair. If technical difficulties are experienced with the live streaming during the meeting, we will adjourn until the issue is resolved. If technical issues can't be resolved, the meeting may be postponed to a later time or date. So before we start tonight's meeting, I'd like to warmly acknowledge the large gallery here this evening. Your presence demonstrates a strong sense of community interest and spirit, which is greatly appreciated. We kindly remind everyone that the primary purpose of a council meeting is to make decisions on various community issues in an orderly and efficient manner. To help us achieve this, we ask that you respect the decision-making process by allowing the meeting to proceed without interruption and refraining from any disruptive behaviour. If disruptions occur, we will politely ask for your cooperation in refraining from further interruptions. Should disruptive behaviour continue, we may need to adjourn the meeting and clear the gallery to ensure the meeting can continue in an orderly manner. So I would now like to recognise the traditional owners of this land in which we meet. So East Gippsland Shire Council acknowledges the Gunai Kurnai, the Monero and Bidawal people as the traditional custodians of this land that encompasses East Gippsland Shire and their enduring relationship with country. The traditional custodians have cared and nurtured East Gippsland for tens of thousands of years. Council values their living culture and practices and their right to self-determination. Council pays respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people living in East Gippsland, their elders past, present and future. In line with the Local Government Act, councillors are able to attend council meetings electronically or in person. When participating in a meeting electronically, a council can only be recorded as present when they confirm that the following criteria is met. 1, they can hear proceedings and can be heard by other members in attendance, and 2, that they can see other members in attendance and can be seen by other members. So I will now confirm with Councillor Crook and Councillor Farquhar, who are attending online, that they can see, hear and be heard, and to note assurance that the location they are participating from is secure to ensure any confidential deliberations remain confidential. So, Councillor Crook, can you see and hear us?
Yes, I can. Thank you, Mayor.
Good, thank you. And can you confirm that the location you are participating from is secure to ensure that any confidential items can be dealt with in a confidential manner?
Yes, I can. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Crook. Councillor Farquhar, can you see and hear us?
Yes, I can, Mayor.
Thank you. And can you confirm that the location you are participating from is secure to ensure that any confidential items can be dealt with in a confidential manner?
Yes, I can confirm that. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Farquhar. If a councillor participating electronically experiences technical difficulties during the meeting, we may adjourn briefly to enable them to rejoin the meeting. Should the councillor be unable to reconnect within 5 minutes, the meeting shall resume in their absence. So 1.2 on the agenda is for apologies, and there are none for tonight's meeting. Now we move to item 1.3, which is declarations of conflict of interest. So councillors are reminded that the Local Government Act requires conflict of interest to be disclosed in accordance with the procedures set out in the governance rules. This includes stating the following 3 points: the item for which you have a conflict, whether the conflict of interest is general or material, and an explanation why the conflict exists. So, are there any declarations of conflict of interest for tonight's meeting?
Yes, Mayor.
Councillor Crook, I see your hands up.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'd like to declare a conflict in item 5.1.2. It's a material conflict as I live immediately adjacent to the subject land.
Good, thank you very much for revealing that, and I accept your conflict of interest, and I would say when we get to item 5.1.2, I will pause for you to sign off from the meeting for the period of that debate. And then we'll, of course, we will then reconnect with you as quickly as possible and continue the meeting. So thank you for that. Item 1.4, confirmation of the minutes of our last meeting. So do I have someone, a mover and a seconder for that confirmation? So yes, I see Councillor Allen, Councillor Eastman. Thank you. So would you like to speak? No, I thought so. and yourself, Councillor Eastman? No. All right. So is the motion opposed? I see no opposition. So would anyone else like to speak for or against the motion? All right. I will now put the motion to the vote. For all those in favour of accepting the minutes, raise your hands, please. Thank you, councillors. That is unanimous. Now, our next council meeting is scheduled to be held on Tuesday, the 20th of May 2025 at this corporate centre at 273 Main Street, Bensdale, commencing at 6 p.m. 1.6 is requests for leave of absence, and I see that we have no request for leave of absence. So is that correct, Ms Weigel?
That's correct, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Now, there's been an inclusion into the agenda tonight, and it is very sad. It's a condolence message for a member of staff. So I will just read this because before we move on to the open forum section of our meeting, it is my sad duty to acknowledge the recent passing of Kylie Pinkerton. Kylie was a loved member of our organisation, having dedicated 30 years of service to the Gippsland community through her work in our libraries. She began as a trainee in 1994 and went on to become a qualified librarian. Her work was more than a job, it was a true passion. Kylie was instrumental in creating and delivering many of the library programs our community knows and loves, from rhyme time and school holiday events to tech help with youth initiatives. Her work touched the lives of thousands and helped make our libraries welcoming and inspiring spaces for all. So on behalf of East Gippsland Shire Council, we extend our deepest condolences to Kylie's family, friends and colleagues. The sound has been restored, so I hope that you captured that last piece. Thank you. So we'll now move to open forum, and our first item is petitions. So council has received a petition in relation to Horton Crescent, Eagle Point, which is item 1.7.1.1 on tonight's agenda. So I'll now ask the General Manager of Business Excellence, Sarah Johnson, to please present the petition.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, before you tonight is an acknowledgement report for a petition request to change the Tree Street variety in Horton Crescent, Eagle Point. The key points for the report is the petition was received in hard copy on the 3rd of April and included 32 valid signatures that meet the requirements of the governance rules. The petition requests the change in the selected street height variety from acacia melanoxylon, I knew I was going to get that wrong, to ornamental pear or a similar tree, to align with the existing planting theme established in the nearby River Drive. A full copy of the petition has been provided to councillors separately in accordance with our privacy obligations under the Privacy and Data Protection Act. The petition has already been referred to the General Manager of Assets and Environment, and our team have been in contact with Mr Butler to consider other tree types. The report is presented for your consideration, Mayor.
Thank you. So, councillors, are there any questions relating to this petition? I see none. No hands up on screen. So, councillors, there is a recommendation in the report, so I'll now call on any councillor to move a motion. Councillor Buckley, seconder Councillor Allen. So, Councillor Buckley, would you like to speak to this motion?
Happy to receive the petition as read. Thank you, Mayor.
Good, thank you. And Councillor Allen?
Thank you, Mayor. It's always good to get petitions from the community, and this one is no exception.
Thank you. Is the motion opposed? I see nobody. So would anyone like to speak for or against the motion? Okay. Therefore, I will now put the motion to the vote. So all those in favour of accepting this petition? Thank you, councillors. That too is unanimous. 1.7.2 is questions of council. So we'll now move on to questions of council. Before we begin, I'd like to remind everyone that when making your address, you show courtesy and respect to the council, its staff and the processes we follow. We also ask that you take direction from the chair whenever requested. So during public questions or submissions, there won't be any discussion or debate with attendees. However, councillors may ask questions of clarification of the attendee. So, as chair, I may need to stop a question or submission if it is deemed inappropriate or not in line with council's governance rules or mutual respect charter. So each person addressing council is allocated a maximum of 5 minutes speaking time. There are a total of 19 public questions for tonight's meeting submitted by 13 members of the community. A large number, now 9 people, have requested that the CEO present their questions on their behalf. These questions will be heard first, and then the individual community members present at the meeting will be called on to come forward and present their questions themselves. So, Ms Weichel, could you please present the questions you have been asked to read on behalf of community members?
Thank you, Mayor. The first question is from Mr Stephen Hardy. He has 2 parts to his question. I will, as they're not directly interlinked, I'll ask them to be responded to separately. Question 1 is that there seems to be many conflicts with the planning guidelines and breaches of the rules of strategic planning. Can you tell us if the 2021 Victorian Precinct Structure Planning Guidelines 2.0 must be followed, or if they are optional? And I'll refer this question to Chris Stevenson, our General Manager of Place and Community.
Thanks for the question, and through you, Mayor. The Paynesville Growth Area Structure Plan was prepared in 2016, whilst the Victorian Precinct Structure Plan guidelines were not released until 2021. The guidelines are optional and are more applicable to a metropolitan context as they are designed to guide the development of new suburbs of a size and scale that is not applicable to East Gippsland. Furthermore, the guidelines only strictly apply to the Victorian Planning Authority, the VPA, designated precincts, which we do not have in East Gippsland.
Thank you. And the second part of the question is, the CSIRO predicts more extreme weather events like the flash flooding and wild storms that we've experienced recently in the coming years. What is the Council doing to protect stormwater systems, especially near the Lake King foreshore, since landowners haven't been required to do an updated coastal hazard assessment or a full flood study before rezoning? And again, to our General Manager of Place and Community.
And through you, Mayor, Council is working on a number of fronts to plan for extreme weather events and climate-resilient stormwater systems. This includes a Shire-wide climate risk assessment, a drainage management strategy and requirements for new developments to respond to coastal hazards. There is an existing Gippsland Lakes Coastal Hazard Vulnerability Assessment and government mapping data that has helped inform the extent of the proposed zoning for the amendment and the definition of the 2.8 metre AHD line. The 2.8 metre AHD line is important as it identifies the coastal inundation risks below this line. In response, the amendment ensures that no development occurs below this line. Further, the preparation of a development plan for Paynesville growth area will require more detailed design and management arrangements for the coastal interface so the risks are minimised.
Thank you. And moving on to our next question from Pauline Anderson. Are there any plans to update the drainage system in the older part of Paynesville before accommodating all of the new housing projects? Thank you.
Thank you. Council is currently reviewing drainage systems in several locations in Paynesville in response to community feedback. We constantly monitor asset condition and capacity and plan capital improvements and maintenance to our stormwater systems. New housing projects will be required to implement drainage systems that do not place undue pressure on existing drainage infrastructure.
Thank you. Our third lot of questions are from Ms Christine Hardy. Has the council factored in the cost to ratepayers for maintaining, defending and eventually relocating stormwater assets proposed to be built in the foreshore floodplain?
The design of the stormwater asset does not occur at the rezoning stage. The area subject to inundation is proposed to be included in a public conservation zone. Council will not accept public stormwater assets that create unnecessary risks or costs to our ratepayers.
Thank you. And the second question from Ms Hardy. The public consultation for Amendment C172E-GIP saw 95% or 77 of the 81 of all submissions strongly opposed to the proposed rezoning and overlays. Yet not one change was made to the amendment whatsoever. Is this an indication of what we can expect for the development plan's promised public consultation process?
Thanks for the question. As a result of the public exhibition, some changes have been made to the amendment in response. These changes have been listed in the attachments to the council report. However, it is not usual practice to make major changes to an amendment at this stage, but instead, the amendment is referred to an independent panel to enable all submissions to be considered by the panel and recommendations made to council on any further changes. Where submissions oppose the amendment, the option of abandonment of the amendment is available to council, but that would not enable the concerns to be fully examined by an independent panel. Community engagement on the development plan will involve a transparent process where community members can make informed submissions on the detail of the proposed future development, and the council will take into account those submissions which may result in changes before a decision is made on the development plan.
Could we just please pause for a moment? Councillor Farquhar, he's back online now, thank you. Thanks, technicians.
Had you completed that one?
Yes,
Thank
yes,
you.
I have.
We'll next move on to two questions from Ms Annie Gleeson. They do have very long preambles, so bear with me while I try to read through them as quickly as possible, given our time constraints. The project encompasses the C172E-GIP amendment and the Paynesville Growth Area Structure Plan, ergo affecting all of the existing Paynesville residents and not just the landowners that abut the proposed plan. The proposed plan would change Paynesville's beloved character, which is the reason most of us located here, and it will also put further strain on the already stretched essential services. The council claimed to be encouraging transparency and accountability, yet so many residents were oblivious to the proposed changes until residents, at their own expense, did a letterbox drop. Pushing through the amendment when so few residents actually know little about it demonstrates a lack of transparency and accountability. And the question, very few received or buy the local paper or visit the Shire website. So how do you propose keeping Paynesville residents actively involved and properly informed? Thank you.
Thanks for the question. Council undertook the Public Exhibition Planning Scheme Amendment C172E-GIPS in accordance with the notice requirements of the Planning and Environment Act 1987. Furthermore, public notice was also conducted in accordance with Council standard consultation practices outlined in our engagement policy. However, we have heard the feedback from the community and we acknowledge that we can expand on direct mail outs and better utilise our social media to keep the community informed moving forward. So we acknowledge we can do this better.
Thank you. And the second question, and the preamble to the second question. As an Eagle Bay Village resident, and as the Council are fully aware, our estate floods often. Many of us had to spend thousands of dollars to try and alleviate at least some of the water. However, we're still often inundated, and this is of grave concern. Proper pre-commencement assessments, including an up-to-date flood and coastal hazard studies, are urgently needed before rezoning. The WaterTech 2014 Local Coastal Hazard Assessment, which the amendment heavily relies on, clearly states on page 67 that the assessment is not suitable for and is not intended to be used for land use planning. It is not fit for purpose. If this proposed plan goes ahead with the DPO in place, and should flooding of our properties become worse due to the development? And the question, when Council was asked why the critical and required pre-commencement studies were not being carried out before Council pushed the rezoning through, we were told that Council can't afford them. This is not acceptable. And my question again, when will these studies be carried out prior to rezoning? Thank you.
Thanks for the question. Council has undertaken background studies and reports which are sufficient to support the rezoning. More detailed reports and studies are required as part of the development plan, including drainage and stormwater management. Undertaking the more detailed plans and reports at the development plan stage is common practice in planning in Victoria, and it enables drainage design to be based on proposed road and lot layouts. No subdivision or development plan can occur before the development plan is approved. Any current drainage issues that are experienced could be for a number of reasons, but may be from overland flow due to the fact that the adjoining farmland does not have constructed drainage systems. As future urban development occurs, drainage systems will be constructed to ensure that adequate stormwater drainage is provided.
Thank you. Our next set of questions are from Ms Robin Skipsky. And the preamble to the first question is, on the matter of local services, especially healthcare, we note that the Council isn't directly responsible for these, but Council is approving many new housing projects and at least 3 new over 50s developments. From the 2021 census, it is noted that close to 50% of Paynesville residents have at least one long-term illness, and that the average age of residents was 62 years. We vote Council in to be our voice, and our community voice is already screaming for an upgrade in facilities and more accessible healthcare. And the question, how can Council keep approving all these building projects when we don't have the community care available to service the existing residents?
Thanks for the question. Council has an obligation to plan for continued housing delivery and public infrastructure to meet the needs of a growing population. The expansion and enhancement of our community service delivery, including health services, occurs in response to population growth and demographic change. Service providers can plan for new and expanded services based on population growth and the increasing community need.
Thank you. And the second part to the question, why aren't Council, as representatives of our community, putting pressure on the government to improve our medical facilities and essential services? Thank you.
So Council does advocate on behalf of the community on a range of issues that fall outside of Council's own area of responsibility. This includes advocacy around health services and other essential services. Some of Council's priority advocacy topics can be found on our website within our advocacy strategy. Recently, the Mayor and CEO have met with all 3 local hospital chairs and CEOs to discuss how we work collaboratively to ensure that these services support a growing East Gippsland.
Thank you. The next set of questions are from Donald McPhee. The preamble to the question 1. Deeker coastal overlays clearly show that storm and tide surges will extend beyond the 2.8 metre AHD contour within the next 75 years. And the question 1, considering Council's climate resilience objectives, how has the Council factored in the inevitable future cost to ratepayers for maintaining, defending and eventually relocating the foreshore road and reserve proposed to be built in the coastal hazard zone above 2.8 metres AHD? Thank you.
Thanks for the question. The area affected by inundation are currently defined by policy as the 2.8 metre AHD contour in this location. That includes an 800 millimetre allowance for sea level rise. As policy evolves, government agencies, infrastructure providers and land managers will need to build climate resilience into their asset plans in response, but we cannot currently predict any future changes in the definition of the inundation areas. So it is therefore appropriate that we rely on our current policy.
Thank you. And the second part of the question, the public consultation for the Paynesville amendments saw, and I think we've heard this before, 94% or 78 of the 83 of all submissions strongly opposed the proposed rezoning and overlays, yet no significant changes were made to the amendment that incorporated objectors' concerns. And the question here is, how does Council explain this lack of response to the concerns that were raised, and how can we have confidence that the development plans promise public consultation processes? Thank you.
Thanks for the question. It is a very similar question to one that I read previously, but I'm happy, out of respect to Mr Donald McPhee's question, to reply again. As a result of the public exhibition, some changes have been made to the amendment in response. However, it is not usual practice to make major changes to an amendment at this stage, but instead the amendment is referred to an independent planning panel to enable all submissions to be considered by the panel and recommendations made to Council on any further changes. Where submissions oppose the amendment, the option of abandonment, once again, of the amendment is available to Council, but that would not enable the concerns to be fully examined by an independent panel. Community engagement on the development plan will involve a transparent process where community members can make informed submissions on the detail of the proposed future development, and the Council will take account of those submissions which may result in changes, but before a decision is made on the development plan itself.
Thank you, councillors. We do have a question on another matter, but I think I might keep going with these questions so that Mr Stevenson can stay in the chair. So our next question is question 8 from Miss Lynette Kelly. I'm just making sure that Mr Stevenson is caught up with us.
I think I'm there.
And the question 1, we need habitat protection for wildlife. How many more beautiful old trees will be cut down for developments? Paynesville, and the preamble I think is, Paynesville has always been a place for birds. You are destroying their habitat. Signage is needed to make motorists aware of the birds crossing roads. Thank you, Mr.
And thanks for the question. State legislation requires that native vegetation removal is avoided, minimised or offset in accordance with strict policy guidelines set by state government. The design of future subdivisions for the growth area will seek to protect existing remnant vegetation. Significant patches of vegetation have already been identified for inclusion in public reserves. Foreshore vegetation currently on private land will be included in foreshore reserves that will transfer to public ownership. Individual remnant trees will be included in road reserves or if necessary, protected by planning controls on residential lots.
Thank you. And councillors, we did have one late question from Ms Diane Harris that we will accept. How does Council's limiting the debate on this important planning proposal reconcile with Council's mission statement of responding to and listening to the community? I believe this relates to the planning scheme amendment. So, Mr Stevenson.
Well, Council, from our opinion, is not limited to debate and the process that we're going through tonight. Community members have been given the opportunity to lodge submissions on the amendment and will also be able to present those submissions to an independent planning panel before any final decision is made by Council on the amendment. The recommendation before Council that we will put forward tonight provides the opportunity for all public submissions to be heard by an independent body through a public process.
Thank you. So, councillors, before we move to those that are here to ask their question in person, we do have a question from Peter Jones, which is about some other matters. So, with council's indulgence, I'll move to that question and ask our General Manager of Business Excellence, who is already here, to answer that one. Question 1. Is the community to have clarity on the summary of total expenditure and how many transactions in each of the last 4 years have been authorised under the $500,000 delegation of the CEO. And I believe the preamble belongs to the next question, so if we have that one answered, thank you.
Thank you, and thanks for the question. A list of contracts awarded for the last 5 years up to the 30th of June 2024 period is available on Council's website under the tender section. The information for the current year is progressively reported as part of the quarterly performance reports that are, of course, presented to the Councillor Group on a quarterly basis. The next quarterly report is due to be presented at the Council meeting on the 20th of May. A list of contracts specifically awarded by the CEO under delegation can be provided, though, to Mr Jones separately, as the current registers show all contracts awarded.
Thank you. And the second part of the question, a full officer report on community priorities for inclusion in the 24-25 draft budget was advertised to be presented in today's 15th of April Council meeting. Please confirm that the rescheduled date for delivery of this report and the process by which the community can comment prior to delivery of the draft 25-26 budget document on the 7th of May. And thank you, Ms Johnson.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you again for the question. So, look, I wasn't aware of the report coming to Council today on the community priorities. However, we have sent out a media release and included in the community newsletter the key themes and community feedback, as well as what services the community saw as high priority, and we did that back in March. The community feedback has been informing the development of the council plan and the annual budget for obviously next financial year, and this will be released to the community for another round of community feedback in early May. The budget is then proposed to be presented to the councillor group at the June meeting. We've also emailed all of those details through to Mr Jones this morning as well, based on his question.
Thank you. So, Mayor, that is all of the questions that I've been asked to read out. We have a number of questions that are going to be asked by people that are in the gallery, if you're happy to move to those.
Certainly. Thank you, CEO. So I would now ask or invite Mr Garrett Hall to come forward to the microphone and ask his questions. Please, right in front of you there.
Yep. The officer's recommendation states that no substantial infrastructure shall be located within sensitive foreshore locations or below 2.8 metre AHD. Similarly, the development plan overlay schedule states that no urban development can occur below 2.8 metres AHD to protect against coastal flooding. However, the DPO Schedule 10 still allows stormwater assets to be built below 2.8 metres AHD in the Lake King Foreshore Reserve. Can Council please clarify if the DPO Schedule 10 will be revised so that stormwater infrastructure is now considered urban development that is substantial enough to be located above 2.8 metres AHD?
Thank you for that, and Mr Stevenson will respond to your question. Thank you.
Thanks, and through you, Mayor. Thanks, Mr Hall, for the question. The recommendation that we make makes it clear that no substantial infrastructure will be located below the 2.8 metre AHD line. Future environmental improvements in the land to be rezoned for conservation may include works to improve water quality, but any drainage works required to detain stormwater runoff will need to be included within the area zone for urban development.
Thank you. So I will now invite Ms Heather Oak to come forward and read her question, please. It's turned on at the moment. Yes.
Good evening. I'd just like to read this out. Council's consultation with the community, is that, can everyone hear me?
Bring it closer. There you go.
I'll start again. Council's consultation with the community and referral authorities seeks input to the decision making. However, the reality is that it is simply asking for feedback with very little influence on the final decisions, as was evident in the consultation for this amendment. Essentially, if the development plan is endorsed by council, there will be no checks or balances to decisions made because there's no third-party review or notification rights for ordinary folks or even referral authorities like the CFA, CMA or DECA. Is it correct that community members or referral authorities have no legal right to challenge the process or be informed of change to the development plan over time?
Thank you. Your response, please. Mr Stevenson.
Thank you, and thanks for the question. It's not quite correct. Council's development plan policy requires community consultation to be undertaken in the preparation and amendment of development plans. There have been several cases over recent years where community feedback on development plans has led to significant changes prior to council adoption, and all of our development plans are referred to the relevant referral authorities for comment, and we will absolutely make sure that that's the case.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I will now invite Ms Christine Fisher to come forward and read her question.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Councillors and Chief Exec. As elected members representing our community, do you believe this recommendation has taken into consideration fully the genuine and evidence-based community concerns, not just for this location, but also for the impact on the future identity of Paynesville? If no, then please delay this decision for a full and transparent process to be concluded where local community views are valued and respected. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Could you please respond?
Certainly can. Thanks, Ms Fisher, for your question. To answer this question, from me is provided as a responsible general manager, not as an elected member, obviously. So, officers have taken a very considered and thorough approach to this matter and have followed the procedures set down by legislation for the rezoning of land. The Paynesville growth area has been identified in the planning scheme for over 15 years. Paynesville has progressively grown over the past 50 years and land has been rezoned and developed for housing and community facilities to accommodate that growth. The history of the growth has inevitably led to incremental change in the character of the town, but the overall identity of Paynesville remains as an attractive coastal town that is valued by its residents and its visitors. The concerns expressed by some community members can and will be addressed in the design and development of new neighbourhoods, upgraded road intersections, provision of foreshore reserves and open spaces, walking and cycling paths, etc.
Thank you. And of course, I can't respond to hand gestures, but thank you very much for coming forward and asking your question.
Mayor, if I may, a question of clarification.
Yes, certainly, Councillor Buckley.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that question. It's an important one. I suppose my question is around your question was of the councillor group. And I just want to assure you that there will come a time in this meeting where we will be able to clearly address that. This question forum is not quite the time, but it will be addressed. Certainly I will be addressing that at some point later on in the meeting. So was that clear in what you were asking?
That's exactly what I was hoping you would do, so thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. So, now the last one. I will invite Ms Jennifer Munn to come forward and read her question, please.
Good evening, everybody. My question is to do with the increased traffic and poor planning of traffic. The traffic study from 2016 is based on the 2011 census. This is 14 years out of date, hardly current, and does not take into account the ever-increasing population. When is the council planning to do an upgrade study on traffic?
Thank you. Mr Stevenson.
Yep. And thanks, Ms Munn, for your question. The traffic study undertaken to support the structure plan is not relying on the out-of-date census population data in reaching its conclusions. The study forecasts traffic growth modelled for the proposed development of the growth area, which by definition includes the predicted growth in population as a result of the development. Future traffic volumes identified in the traffic report are based on predicted population growth and the increase in traffic generated over the life of the proposed development. So it's not a static population at a point in time. Traffic assessments will be reviewed as road and intersection designs are prepared to ensure that detailed road design has the capacity to carry the projected traffic volumes.
Can I just ask one more thing? I live in Newlands Drive, which has no footpaths, no bike lanes, and yet is currently used by quite a few residents up and down there. They're now having to negotiate cement trucks, all sorts of other trucks going past there, tradies thundering in and out of the place. I mean, it's becoming quite dangerous.
Okay, I will allow that, but please, the interjection was not really appropriate, but so, yes, so you've made a statement.
That's all right. I'm happy to make the statement.
No, good. Thank you then. So that brings us to 1.7.3, which is public submissions, and of which we have 6 speakers for tonight's meeting, and they wish to speak to item 5.1.1 and 5.1.2. They will be called upon at the item to make their submission. So we can continue moving forward. So 1.8 is items for noting, and there are no items to be tabled at tonight's meeting. Notices of motion, which is item 2. Again, there are none for tonight's meeting. Deferred business, item 3. There are no deferred business for tonight's meeting. And of course, item 4, councillor delegate reports, which I encourage councillors, if you have not done so, to please submit your written reports to be included in the minutes. So thank you, councillors, for that. Now, item 5. The first report is item 5.1.1, which is a planning scheme amendment C172 EGIP implementation of the Paynesville Growth Area Structure Plan. So before this report is presented, I will now ask Mr Glenn Luxford to come forward and make his submission. So Mr Luxford, you have 5 minutes of speaking time. Thank you. Is Mr Luxford present? Surely he's not stuck downstairs. Thank you, that would be good. Okay, but at the minute, Councillor Crook has dropped off, so we need to get him reinstated also. So we'll make use of this pause to get Councillor Crook back. Thank you. Well done. Okay, thank you for that. Mr Luxford's not present, so we'll move now to Mr David Nicastro to come forward and make his submission. So the same for Mr Nicastro. You have 5 minutes of speaking time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, councillors. I have just 3 points to share with you tonight. Firstly, the consultation process outcomes appear unbalanced. Of the 83 submissions received, 76 were from community members raising genuine concerns. Yet only 10 changes were made, with 7 of those changes drawn directly from just 2 submissions. These 2 submitters successfully removed the requirement for an average gross lot yield of 8 to 10 lots per hectare and the need to provide a spacious residential character. The first removed the fixed cap on housing density, giving developers far more leeway to pack in smaller lots, pushing us toward becoming more like Tunny or Cranbourne, rather than the charming coastal town that we all love. Dropping spacious character risks losing the requirement to create a town with space for people to belong and enjoy. Secondly, the amendment weakens public scrutiny and oversight. The use of the development plan overlay is designed to streamline development by cutting out the independent umpire, VCAT. That means the council alone has the final say on planning decisions and how much community input is allowed. If serious concerns are raised, even by referral authorities like the CFA or DECA, there is no legal right to challenge planning decisions or even be notified of changes to the plan. This lack of oversight makes the whole process feel less like planning and more like decision-making behind closed doors, where the community is excluded. This is not what you'd expect from a council that believes in accountability and transparency and claims to put community at the centre of its decision-making. It's for this reason that structure planning, which underpins the DPO, must be orderly and thorough, which leads me to my final point. There has been a glaring lack of data-driven strategic planning. Under the Victorian VPA 2021 guidelines, optional as they may be, structure planning should begin with the pre-commencement phase, where we conduct proper investigations to collect data on areas that are prone to erosion or coastal hazards and flood risks, for instance, as well as determining infrastructure needs. This work is usually funded through a third-party funding agreement between council, landowners and other authorities. Once we fully understand the land's limits and the community's needs, then we can rezone. Rushing ahead without up-to-date studies is like planting crops before checking if there's enough water or fertiliser to see them grow. It's backwards thinking. To paraphrase Crowther and Sadler's recent submission to council, to rezone this parcel without the necessary investigations is inappropriate. At a minimum, we'd expect studies on bushfire, cultural heritage, flora and fauna, stormwater, waterway buffers, traffic and infrastructure. Up-to-date studies. I've added that bit. Without these, there's simply no evidence to support the assumption that the site is suitable. On that basis, Crowther and Sadler state that the proposed rezoning fails to meet Ministerial Direction 11, Strategic Assessment of Amendments. While this submission was about Eagle Point, it applies just as strongly here, if not more so. Though far from perfect, the Eagle Point structure plan is more complete and detailed than what was seen for Paynesville. The few studies done for Paynesville rely on outdated 2011 census data, which doesn't meet today's needs. Simply put, proper studies and strategic planning must come before rezoning, not after. This is just common sense. Delaying these studies till after rezoning is like building a house first and then surveying the ground to find the best place to put it. You're practically inviting trouble. Besides, the community is rightly concerned to feel that when studies are paid for and managed solely by developers, they naturally hold more influence over the results, potentially tilting outcomes toward their commercial interests rather than the community's. This proposal is simply not ready to go to a planning panel. I strongly urge you to vote for option 2, vote for the community. Yes, it may delay the process for 4 to 6 months, but that time is needed. It allows us to do the proper groundwork, get the evidence that's needed, and plan in a way that meaningfully benefits the community. This is a once-in-a-generation decision that will shape our town's future. Please, let's get it right.
Thank you. Just thank you for that submission. Now, councillors, There is to be no discussion or debate in relation to this presentation, but does anyone have any questions of clarification of Mr De Castro in relation to this?
Yes, please. Thank you, Mayor. Mr De Castro, I'm a little bit confused. You mentioned something about developer contributions in two parts of the your presentation.
Yeah.
In one of them, you said the council and developers should partner to do presentations. Is that correct?
That's what their guidelines recommend.
Yeah, and in the other part, you said if developers do them by themselves, then they might be tainted in some way.
Yeah, so if you do the guidelines recommend that you do them jointly with council, landowners and other authorities at the very start of the structure planning process. However, what's been recommended by the amendment is that we just let the developer do them as part of the development plan. And that, that has some, for a lot of the members in the community, they feel that if you give all the technical studies and you're relying just on the developers, then they manage that process. They can edit out and filter the recommendations to suit their interests potentially ahead of the communities.
Sorry, just to clarify, if you're putting a structure plan in place to guide future growth in an area, do you need a developer to do that? I'm just not...
It's recommended that it's done jointly because the developers, look, the landowners have, they get to benefit from obviously from the rezoning, so they're asked to bear some of the costs of that planning, and other authorities and the council can then guide that process and have input with the consultants on what studies will be done, how they're going to be done, and hopefully we'll be able to be presented with the drafts, not given the studies after their client has gone through them.
So, sorry, I'm still a bit confused. So you shouldn't do a structure plan unless you've got a developer ready to do it? Like you don't do an independent structure plan independently, or do you always rely on developers to...
It's probably best a question for...
I think we might leave it at that. Thank you, Councillor. So anybody else got clarification issues? Okay, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
So I will now ask Ms Kate Young to come forward and make her submission. Ms Young, you also have 5 minutes of speaking time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, councillors, CEO. When I was last here, we were talking about the challenges of a council budget, and I wonder if you'd charged admission tonight, you could have filled part of that hole. I'd like to thank you all for the opportunity to speak on behalf of the landowners within the Paynesville growth area. I can confirm they're all here, they're just not upstairs. They didn't get here in time to get a front row seat, so they're downstairs watching on their live stream and very keen to participate in this process. Tonight's item represents the next step in a logical and orderly process, but it's by no means the end. As many of you are aware, the Paynesville growth area is one of only 3 designated growth areas within the East Gippsland Shire, and after many years of planning is proposed to be rezoned to meet the existing and future housing needs of our community. So tonight's recommendation to proceed to an independent planning panel is entirely consistent with usual planning processes across the state, where proposed amendments have received submissions that cannot be readily resolved. So this process will provide all submitters with a chance to have their views considered by an independent panel appointed by the Minister for Planning before any decisions are made on the rezoning of the land. Beyond tonight's consideration, there remains ample opportunities for interested parties within the community to remain involved in the future development planning process, where the further specifics of future development will be explored. So councillors, tonight is just another step in a comprehensive planning process that your planning officers have been coordinating. The combined landowner group are here tonight to listen to the matters raised and look forward to continuing to work collaboratively with council and the community to achieve a diverse housing outcome that provides future opportunities for all the community within this important growth area. And we certainly support the recommendation to proceed to an independent planning panel and look forward to your support to do so. Because I'm under time, I wonder if I could offer one item of clarification to Councillor Eastman's question. And you asked a question of Mr Nicastro about the structure plan. Just to clarify, a structure plan is in place for this area. It has been since 2016. It was done by council with no developer involvement. So I hope that provides some clarification there. But thank you for the opportunity to submit tonight.
Thank you. Just before you go, councillors, any questions of clarification to Ms Young?
Thank you.
Good, thank you very much. So, I will now ask General Manager of Place and Community, Chris Stevenson, to please present your report at 5.1.1. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Before you is a report which requests that Council refer Planning Scheme Amendment C172 GIP to an independent planning panel. Planning Scheme Amendment C172 GIP seeks to implement the Paynesville Structure Plan into the East Gippsland Planning Scheme, rezoning land and applying relevant overlays. In summary, the officer's recommendation is that the Council requests that the Minister for Planning appoints an independent planning panel to consider all submissions received. The recommendation includes clarification of matters that will be presented to the planning panel in relation to 1. The avoidance of infrastructure placement within the sensitive foreshore locations or below 2.8 metres AHD, and provisions to regulate built form in a manner that promotes view sharing, provisions of spacious neighbourhood character and retention of significant native vegetation. Some key points for consideration are 1. The amendment proposes, and just before I say that, sorry Mayor, I'd just like to acknowledge all the questions and that we've had tonight, and some of this might sound a little repetitive, but there's certainly been some really good questions fielded. The amendment proposes to rezone the Paynesville growth area to general residential zone to provide for future housing supply. Council has an obligation to ensure that land is available for delivery of housing in accordance with the Victorian Government policy. The Paynesville growth area has been identified in the East Gippsland planning scheme for over 15 years and as the logical area for expansion of the town. And this is the first step in establishing the framework for future planning. The amendment does not commit Council to detailed outcomes in relation to lot size and layout, infrastructure provision, drainage arrangements, protection of environmental values and other details that will be required in advance of development approvals. The amendment process to apply the development plan overlay, Schedule 10, which requires that a development plan must be prepared for public consultation and approved by Council prior to any subdivision and development taking place. The development plan must address a wide range of planning considerations, including but not limited to infrastructure provision, biodiversity, urban design, traffic and the foreshore interface. The development plan stage is the appropriate mechanism for defining specific details of the future development. The amendment has been through a 10-week public exhibition process and, as we've heard, 84 submissions were received. While some changes have been proposed by officers in response to submission, there are many submissions that either oppose the rezoning or request a much greater level of detail that would normally be addressed at the development plan or subdivision application stage. If a planning panel is appointed, all submitters will have the opportunity to be heard at a public hearing. The panel will prepare a report after the hearing process, and this report will be brought before Council at a future Council meeting for consideration. This process is consistent with the legislation and provides further opportunity for Council to make recommendations to the Minister for Planning on the amendment. Also present with me tonight, I have Martin Richardson, Manager of Planning and Development, and Kalindi Chester, Strategic Planning Project Coordinator. So this report is presented to you for your consideration. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Stevenson. So, councillors, are there any questions of clarification? Councillor Eastman.
In relation to the amendment, it removes a significant amount of, a large part of significant landscape overlay. I understand that's because that applies to rural areas, not urban ones. I also understand that design and development plans are put in place for urban areas. Is one proposed for this bit of land where housing goes?
Thank you, Councillor Eastman. You are correct that the significant landscape overlay is being removed from this site because its original intent and application was to rural areas and vistas to and from the Gippsland Lake system. If that area gets urbanised, the significant landscape overlay is no longer consistent with that use. In terms of, you're right, the design and development overlay Schedule 14 applies to Paynesville at the moment. The decision was made not to apply it to the growth area because we are applying a development plan overlay, and that overlay will help to control built form, as Chris mentioned in his presentation, in relation to building envelopes and protecting views, spacious. Sorry, it's my first council meeting, I'm a bit nervous. And yeah, so built form outcomes is probably the best way to put it. Did that answer your question?
I think so. So effectively you're saying that the development plan overlay plays the same role as the design and development overlay?
In this case, it's not usual practice to have both applied because they can largely do the same thing. The difference though with the design and development overlay is purely about design and development, whereas the development plan overlay is a bit more flexible and it can include things, as this one does, such as infrastructure provision, shared costs and other elements that apply to the development of the land. So it was seen as a more, I guess, rigorous tool for this particular site to draw in not just built form, but also the other requirements we need for the overall development.
Good, thank you. Councillor Crook, you have your hand up online.
I do, yes. Thank you, Mayor. Look, we know the Gippsland Lakes and our local environment are very important to the community. I guess that's in part why people live here and probably a key element of neighbourhood character, you might say. So I've been reading quite widely in the lead up to this decision, and I found a key issues and responses report from 2015 commissioned by this council as part of the scoping studies for the Paynesville Structure Plan, and that report recommended a 50-metre buffer be applied to the lake to allow for native vegetation retreat as the shoreline moves inland, and to also allow for the relocation of the Paynesville walking track. My question is, why are we not following this advice, and what measures are in place to ensure that these important features of the area are being catered for in this process?
Thank you, Councillor Cook. I'll take that question. So the 50-metre buffer refers to as you've suggested, refers to a proposed setback of development from the shoreline, and in particular the requirement which is likely to come about in the future for the relocation of the Paynesville Eagle Point walking path, particularly in the area around the Fullerton Drive subdivision. That 50-metre, the 2.8 metre AHD line which occurs in the structure plan and in the proposed rezoning coincides or exceeds the 50-metre separation from the lake. So what it provides is a significant buffer of land which is currently, particularly in the western part of the precinct, which is currently privately owned, and it provides for that land to go into public ownership and be zoned public conservation zone. So the 50-metre buffer was a kind of a lateral separation from the edge of the lakes. The 2.8 metre AHD line is a height separation, and across the length of that shoreline, the 2.8 metre line provides for a 50 metre or greater buffer from the shoreline of the lakes.
Thank you. And another question, if I may, Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
We heard from submitters tonight that the density provisions from the growth area have been removed from the proposal. I think that they used to be 8 to 10 blocks per hectare or something similar. Does this mean that there will be no cap on the future intensity of the development?
That is correct. So the 8 to 10 hectares was drawn directly from the structure plan, which was obviously done in 2016. Since then, there's been a substantial change in state policy and direction around housing provision and lot densities. Rather than densities, we talk about lot diversity now. So I think when you read what we're proposing in place of that particular wording, it is about lot diversity for the needs of our current and future communities. So you're right, it doesn't cap it at any particular lot per hectare.
I might just add, Councillor, if I may, that despite the fact that the current policy doesn't cap lot size or doesn't cap density or provide minimum lot sizes, that the development plan, the preparation of a development plan can do so. So what a development plan can do is it can identify particular neighbourhoods or sub-precincts within the growth area and can say within this area we are proposing this kind of density, and in that area over there a different kind of density. So the development plan will include a number of sub-precincts and will identify those precincts where medium density housing might be regarded as suitable, and it'll identify other precincts where standard residential subdivision lot sizes might be suitable, more in the 600 to 700 square metre lots. That development plan can then lock in that arrangement for particular densities in particular locations and shall require that any future subdivision application is in accordance with those densities that are identified in the development plan.
Good, thank you.
Understood. Thanks for your response. Mayor, I have a couple more questions. Would you prefer I ask those now or maybe wait for some other councillors to have a go first?
Well, I'll ask Councillor Buckley to ask her question because you never know, it could be one of yours.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And through you, thanks very much. I have a couple of questions, actually 3. I'll make them brief. The first one is relevant to the development plans process. It's a process question. As I understand it, if tonight's motion is successful and it goes to the hearing stage, and then once the development plan process is initiated, is that's developer driven, but then council has oversight on that? Is that correct?
Yes, correct. So we are still the responsible authority, and much like any other application, the developer must submit it for consideration, and part of that is the community consultation aspect, and it will come to council as well before a decision is made.
So there'll be further community consultation in regards to that process. Thank you for that answer. There were some concerns raised around the technical background reports being outdated. Around, and also questions around, amenities, etc. There was an update, from my recollection, of some of it wasn't there that was ratified. I just want some clarification around some of those reports. You weren't here, so that's an unfair question for you, but perhaps Martin might be able to respond to that.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Buckley. So the reference is acknowledged to the fact that the structure plan was prepared in 2016, and at the time we had 2011 census data. But nothing that's in the background reports or the structure plan is reliant on 2011 ABS data, because we had the predictions, we had the population projections. In 2016, we were able to look at the projections for population in Paynesville and understand the growth rates that were likely, and that was the basis for which the reports were prepared. So, for example, commentary was made about out-of-date assumptions in the traffic report. The traffic report actually doesn't rely on population data, it relies on vehicle predictions. So the traffic report says the growth of Paynesville in this precinct will increase theoretically by 1,200 odd dwellings. That is this many vehicle movements per dwelling. Here's the projected traffic that will come from that growth, and here is the road capacity required to satisfy that.
Okay.
So those reports aren't reliant on population data, they're reliant on growth data, which is quite robust, and in fact for the last 20 years has been very, very accurate, 1.5 to 1.6% growth per annum in Paynesville.
Okay, thank you. So my final question, Mayor, if I may, is about community character. You know, having lived in Paynesville myself and understanding the beauty of the place and the people and the character of a seaside village, what provision will be made to be able to ensure that this development will be able to, I guess, harness but also honour the community character of Paynesville?
So I acknowledge that if this proceeded, this development would be grow Paynesville by quite a lot, and from that we expect its own character to emerge. Martin alluded to sub-precincts. In land of that size with that kind of amount of allotments, there will be character that emerges on its own, but also the development plan overlay, and I know it sounds like I'm repeating myself, but it does provide that greater level of detail on what it will look like. It won't just show lots on the ground. There is requirements in the DPO to address character, and even beyond that, we have put character objectives within the general residential zone schedule for this precinct, which would mean that anything that required a planning permit now or in the future would need to adhere to those character objectives, which talk about coastal character and the character of Paynesville.
I might also add, if I might, Councillor, that when the structure plan was prepared, an assessment was undertaken of the existing character of the existing part of Paynesville. So streets like Langford Parade and Wellington Street and Ashley Street and King Street were looked at in terms of street width, verge width and street tree planting. And the structure plan was prepared on the basis that objectives were written then there to replicate that character. Wide streets, wide verges, tree-lined streets, but also the structure plan includes, for example, drainage corridors that serve as recreation pathways as well. So there are a couple of drainage lines through the structure plan area that are proposed to provide wide green corridors for people to move through. Equally, the foreshore development, the walking paths, the cycling paths that were proposed in the structure plan are there to replicate the character that people value about Paynesville and to create an environment which reflects the existing character of the township.
One more supplementary question, sorry, Mayor. Will that also include provision for health facilities and a section that will be able to provide services for that part of Paynesville?
So there is provision in both the structure plan and the development plan overlay for a local activity centre. It's proposed to be located on Paynesville Road, somewhere up close to the cemetery. Its exact size and its exact location is yet to be determined, and that will be shown on the development plan, and that will invite certain localised retail medical services as the population grows.
Thank you for those answers to the questions. Now, Councillor Eastman, you've got your microphone on, so you have a question?
Yeah, thanks. Two questions, actually. Sorry, Kalinda, you mentioned the need to consider neighbourhood character if a permit is required for a building or a development. Are there things within this overarching change that won't require a permit and therefore won't be required to meet neighbourhood character?
Potentially, so things like single dwellings or a shed or maybe a carport or an extension. There are minor things that anywhere in Paynesville currently don't trigger a permit, and that would likely be the same here. That's a tricky thing to answer because it depends what they're proposing and where they're proposing it and what triggers a planning permit.
Oh, sorry. So I misunderstood. I didn't realise. So basically any residents will be required to meet.
So I think as a first step, the development plan needs to address character, and as Martin says, it's as much about what people or what's built on a lot as it is the public realm. But in addition to that, the general residential 3 that's proposed for this particular area does have specific objectives that if you or I lived there and required a planning permit at some point in the future, we would have to consider those in our proposal.
And my final question. I understand that the community has now got an opportunity to have further input. Generally, it sounds like the community would prefer to have another few months to try to work this through. What level of confidence do you have that in the development of the development plan that it will be able to reflect community aspirations?
I think as an initial first step, if the matter is referred to an independent planning panel, that is the next step, and that is another form of community consultation in this process where everyone will get their submissions heard and the panel may make recommendations on changes or things that they recommend. That happens, that is the next step if that's where we go. If we get to that point where a development plan is being prepared and it goes out on community consultation, I'm extremely confident that we can design a robust consultation program, and I've heard what the community said since we've done the exhibition about getting the message out there to more people. I have worked in development plans where significant changes have been made in response to community feedback and sentiment. So whilst I know the community is concerned about how the state provision says that you don't have to do public exhibition, but we are committed, and we have certainly done it in the past, in making sure the community comes on board along with the journey to work out what is the best outcome for this site. And that goes for if the development plan is amended as well.
Now, I think I understand, have you got a question, Councillor Ashworth or Councillor Allen? No?
Tom's got his hand.
Yeah, no, I realise Tom's going to ask, so nothing on my left. So, all right, Councillor Crook, you had two more questions to ask. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, thank you. I've got a specific question in relation to process and future public consultation. Part of my reading, I've come across planning practice note number 23 from the Victorian Planning Authority in relation to development plan overlays. It states that development plan overlays will remove notice requirements and third-party review rights from planning permit applications for proposals that conform to the plans. Now, I understand our council has a policy, which is a good one, which will allow some community consultation about the development plan overlay or its requisite studies. But the thing I'm struggling to understand is that the planning practice note, number 23, also specifically states that where a development plan has been prepared to the satisfaction of the responsible authority, which is us, the council, the overlay schedules cannot include a requirement for consultation, and that the responsible authority should not use non-statutory consultation practices to assist in deciding a development application or planning application. So I'm just seeking some clarification on how I'm supposed to reconcile what I'm hearing around our intent to undertake further consultation, where that seems to be at odds with what the Victorian Planning Authority recommends in its planning practice note.
Thanks, Councillor Cook. Very good question. And there's a little nuance in it that hopefully will resolve that concern. So Council's policy on the preparation of development plan requires consultation with the community. In the absence of that policy, the council officers would not need to consult with the community, but we wrote the policy because we understand the importance of consultation with the community in the preparation of development plans. And I think you asked a couple of weeks ago of where that has happened in the past, and the classic one for us was 10 Marlow Road in Marlow, which took 6 years of consultation to get to a development plan, which was largely formed by community views. So that policy is there because we recognise that the community needs to be engaged in the preparation of the development plan for the reason raised in the second part of your question. The state provisions for development plan overlays remove the right of appeal to VCAT for decisions made that are in accordance with that development plan. So the process is that we consult with the community, we arrive at a development plan that receives community submissions, and the council adopts it. Then when we get a subdivision application that is in conformity with that development plan, The statewide provisions that apply to every council in Victoria say that there is no right of appeal to VCAT against decisions on those subdivisions. And that's why the consultation at the development plan stage is critical, because otherwise the community would not have a right to comment and to provide input on the development that occurs at a later stage. Now, the reason why that exclusion of VCAT appeal is there is because arguably it duplicates the process. You've been through the preparation of a development plan, the community's commented on it, the council's adopted it, someone lodges a subdivision application which is in accordance with that development plan. It is only fair that there should not be the right to appeal against that decision, because we've already been through the process of deciding what the appropriate development outcome is there. This is a statewide provision. And the comment you made about that council should not undertake statutory consultation, you're correct. If we receive a subdivision application for a development plan that's adopted, then we can advertise it, but we can't, strictly speaking, legally take consideration of objections, because that would create the false impression that people have a right of appeal.
Okay, thanks, understood. And I guess that just reinforces the importance of the community's involvement at least some stage. One final question, if I may, Mayor.
Yes, you did say you had 2 more questions, so you're halfway there.
Thank you. On page 270 of tonight's agenda, for anybody who's got that far, the Department of Environment, Energy and Climate Action, DECA, makes the point that the Paynesville Growth Area Structure Plan has not identified native vegetation biodiversity values or clearly outlined how and when these values will be identified. They state that the plan lacks strategic consideration for biodiversity values. They then go on to say that areas of high quality native vegetation and biodiversity values should be identified at the strategic planning stage, considered for retention and incorporated into the plans, so risks to biodiversity can be managed appropriately. My question is, why aren't we following the subject matter experts' advice on this, when in our last council meeting, this advice from the same authority was given primacy in the council making decision process? I guess it's like, why have the DECA studies, or the studies that DECA recommends to protect nature, not been undertaken?
Thanks, Councillor. And our response to that is that the preparation of a development plan is a strategic planning exercise. It's not a statutory planning exercise, because it's not about issuing a permit. So the next stage of strategic planning, the preparation of the development plan, enables us to specifically identify areas of significant native vegetation and protect them. At the rezoning stage, that is very difficult, unless you go and do a whole lot of detailed work to find every individual tree. But at the next stage of strategic planning, when an overall plan for the development of the land is put in place, that's the opportune time to identify those specific native vegetation values and ensure that the native vegetation is protected either by way of public reserve, road reservations or other mechanisms to protect vegetation. Our view is that that's the appropriate stage to do it, because then you can match up the native vegetation protection requirements with the actual layout of the development.
Okay, I don't really understand. I don't see why you wouldn't do it at this stage before the land is rezoned, so it can be incorporated into the rezoning process, but that's not really a question, it's just a statement. Thanks for your response.
Good. Thank you, Mr Richardson, and thank you.
One more, please,
Kalindi. You another question?
Yes,
All
sorry.
right. Okay.
Apologies. Just trying to get my head around the zoning part of it. I understand we're looking at general residential zone. There were quite significant changes in 2017 to the GRZ across the state. And the reasoning given for doing this as a GRZ is because the other parts of Paynesville are GRZ, and it was for that consistency. But would I be correct in saying that GRZ, as it previously applied to Paynesville, gives a very different outcome to GRZ that will apply to this new growth area? And can you clarify why you wouldn't have chosen to use neighbourhood residential zone instead?
Absolutely. So the neighbourhood residential zone is about minor or minimal change over time. whereas the general residential zone is about moderate growth over time. And what we're looking for here is moderate growth over time. So if you look at the planning practice note on how to apply residential zones, and the number escapes me, it might be 92, it talks about how to apply them. So where you want minimal change, neighbourhood residential zone is a great option. Where you want moderate change over time, general residential zone is great, and where you want high change, there's other zones that you usually find in a metropolitan setting. So for those reasons, the neighbourhood residential zone wasn't considered a good fit. This is a growth area where we're looking for a certain lot yield and the establishment of, precincts and neighbourhoods. And yes, consistency is also one thing, but it's more about what we're looking to see here, so that minimal versus moderate growth. And you're right, the general residential zone is applied to nearly every residential community in East Gippsland, but it allows the same thing everywhere. The only difference with what we're proposing to apply here, it's general residential 3, it has those specific character objectives at the start, which are specific to the Paynesville growth area.
Councillor Davis.
Thanks, and through you, Mayor. Just a quick one of clarification in relation to page 271 on Deeker's report. Although, I guess, Councillor Crook's concerns, Deeker did actually, they do not oppose this amendment, do they?
Correct, they have not formally objected, and I have followed up with them about their submission, and you'll find that there were some changes made to the wording of the amendment in response, and that it was agreed about the process, so talking them through. They weren't really across the development plan overlay process. We don't do it very often in Gippsland, so they weren't completely aware that there was more steps where these sorts of studies could be undertaken and put forward. But no, you're right, they don't formally object.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Ashworth.
Thank you,
did
Mayor.
ask before.
Thank you, Mayor.
How about that?
Here I am, through. Could you just clarify or give us some information about what happens if the amendment is abandoned, and in terms of timelines, if this goes to panel? So 2 questions. If it goes to panel, the timelines and the process for that.
Thanks, Councillor Ashworth. So if the amendment's abandoned, then the option for council really remains start again. Start again means, for us, the last 3 years' work is abandoned. That would enable a whole lot more studies to be undertaken. It would enable a whole lot more consultation to be undertaken. Our view is that we would arrive at the same place. We would have a rezoning, and then we'd be saying we need to prepare a development plan, which is the next step. So abandonment, from our point of view, doesn't achieve anything in the sense that the panel process will enable all of these issues to be addressed. And it would create significant uncertainty in terms of how long the process would take. I'd say with my team's resources, it would take us a year to get back to where we are. And we wouldn't be doing any other strategic planning for Lakes Entrance or Bairnsdale or Marlow or Romeo. That seems to me to be not a very good option, given that the alternative is have the matters addressed at a panel. The planning panel is scheduled in, Kalindi, July, August?
Yeah, so they have what we call a directions hearing, which is scheduled for May, and then the formal hearing is loosely scheduled for July, but those dates are subject to change.
So then once the planning panel meets, it has a specified period to provide a report to us. I think it's 40 days, so that would take us to September-ish. And then we would schedule a report to council to consider the recommendations of the panel. The council then passes a resolution as to whether it will adopt or change those recommendations and makes a recommendation to the minister as to its final decision. And then the minister is able to then determine whether or not the amendment goes ahead. So planning, if the process occurs according to that, then we could expect by towards the end of the year or early next year that we would have a decision from the minister.
Thank you. So I'll just look around. I think that might be all the questions at this stage. So, councillors, there is a recommendation in the report, so I'll now call on any councillor to move a motion. Councillor Buckley?
Yes.
You wish to move the motion?
Happy to get the microphone to work. Yes, I'm happy to move the motion, Mayor.
Okay, do we have a seconder? Councillor Allen. So, Councillor Buckley, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, look, certainly. First of all, I'd like to thank and acknowledge the many people here tonight and the people in our community who took the time to make a submission on this amendment. Whether you wrote it just a few lines or several pages, you did so because you care about your neighbourhood, your environment and the future of Paynesville, and that matters, and we do understand the challenges. As councillors, we've read your submissions, we've heard your concerns about the environment, infrastructure and the impact on lifestyle, the character of the town and the pace of growth. I want to say clearly you've been heard, and tonight's decision is not the end of the conversation, it's the next step, and it ensures that concerns are properly and independently considered. I support the officer's recommendation to refer Amendment C172 EGIP to an independent planning panel, because that's exactly what this process is designed for. It allows for an impartial, expert review of unresolved submissions, and it gives submitters the chance to present their views directly to the panel in a formal and respectful setting. This isn't just bureaucracy, it's a safeguard, and it's how we make sure voices from the community continue to be at the centre of the process and not on the sidelines. We know housing is urgently needed in East Gippsland, and Paynesville is expected to play a key role in that growth. But we also know that change must be thoughtful, well-planned and community-informed. That's why I'm particularly supportive of Council's commitment to protecting sensitive foreshore areas, respecting native vegetation and ensuring future development supports a spacious and livable neighbourhood. The development plan, which comes after this amendment stage, will include further consultation, which you've been informed of tonight. And that's another chance for the community to have a say in how the detail unfolds, what it looks like and how it feels, and what's important to protect. So tonight I support this recommendation not as a green light for development, but as a green light for fair process, proper scrutiny and continued community involvement. So thank you to everyone who's contributed so far, and your voices will remain central to what happens next. So I commend this motion to the councillors for their consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. Councillor Allen, you wish to respond?
Thank you, Mayor. Only to say I think Councillor Buckley has eloquently summed it up. This process, as I see it, is the next stage of consultation, and people can be assured that it's independent. One of the criticisms I've heard up until now is, oh, it's council officers pushing their own thing. There's no suggestion of that once it goes to an independent panel, and I think that that's crucial to making sure that we get the very best outcome.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Now I'd ask councillors, is the motion opposed? Okay, Councillor Eastman, she's put her hand up first, so you would be next, Councillor Crook.
I'm opposing the motion reluctantly in some ways. I understand the community's concerns about the process so far. I also understand that they feel that if they had another few months to work this out with officers, there might be an outcome that they could take to the planning panel eventually that would lead to a quicker result at the panel. I feel there's a fair bit of a lack of knowledge and uncertainty in relation to how the process plays out. There's possibly a little bit of distrust, which I think is really unfortunate. And I feel we have an opportunity for the community and council to work together and build a better relationship over the next 4 months or so. I don't think it's a huge imposition in terms of cost given what's gone on before. I feel, having looked at the original Paynesville Growth Area Structure Plan, it's very different to what we're seeing now, so I can understand why the community feels it's not quite the same as what's being presented. So I'd actually like to see option B being taken up instead of the second option rather than the first.
Good, thank you. So before I come to you, Councillor Crook, is there anyone else wishing to speak for the motion? Councillor Ashworth.
Thanks, and through you, Mayor. I'm supporting the officer's recommendation regarding planning amendment C172 EQ, which seeks to implement the Paynesville Growth Area Structure Plan. I've not taken the decision lightly. I've asked questions of fellow councillors, officers and community members, and I'd like to thank them for their advice, their thoughts and their feedback. And I can also assure you that there's been a robust discussion at home about it. I believe that this amendment represents a significant opportunity for Paynesville and our region. It provides the structure and the clarity we need to manage growth responsibly and to preserve what makes Paynesville special. We know our region is changing. We've seen and we know that growth is coming, whether we plan for it or not. The amendment is our opportunity to plan for it properly, to ensure that housing growth happens where it makes sense, supported by roads, schools, drainage, open space and community services. We need to be able to say to those that want to live here, but also we need to say yes to those that want to live here, but also we need to be able to say to developers, yes, but only if you follow our plan. We need to ensure that we are not reacting to development, rather that we are leading it. I want to acknowledge the submissions we've received, both in support and raising concerns. Every voice matters, and I thank those in our community who took the time to contribute. This is a significant amendment, and it needs to go through the next formal step, requesting the Minister for Planning to appoint an independent planning panel which ensures all community members have their views heard by an impartial body. As required under the Planning and Environment Act 1987 and in accordance with standard practice for significant strategic amendments, I support the recommendation to formally request that the Minister for Planning appoint the independent panel to consider all the submissions. An independent panel provides transparency and accountability, expert review of technical and policy issues raised, and it's confidence for submitters, stakeholders and the broader community that all views are heard and evaluated fairly. This is not only a statutory process, it's also a demonstration of good governance and community responsive planning. It's important to emphasise that no development can occur without a development plan, and that plan will be subject to public comment, requires council approval, and addresses key matters like infrastructure, the environment, subdivision layout and open space. This gives community further opportunity to be involved and ensures development is carefully assessed before it proceeds. It's about ensuring as we grow that we grow well. It's about ensuring we retain what we love about Paynesville, its natural beauty, its connected community and its unique character, while also making space for new families, workers and businesses who want to call it home. It's about shaping Paynesville's future, not for the next few years, but also for the future and the next generation. It gives us structure to grow well, protect what matters and plan with confidence. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Ashworth. So I'd now ask, are there any more councillors who wish to speak for or against? Yes, Tom, thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. And I'll just start by saying that I do appreciate the work that officers have done on this to date. and also the various submissions that we've heard from the community. And I thoroughly endorse Councillor Ashworth's sentiments around the need for responsible future growth in the Paynesville area, and of course that includes residential development. When I attended the community meeting in Paynesville now some months ago, most people I spoke to there didn't know about this proposed planning scheme amendment. Now, I'll be the first to acknowledge that our officers have done a lot of work here, but irrespective of those efforts, I can't escape the feeling that the community haven't been brought along with us on this journey, and I think we owe it to them to make sure that they are. As we've heard tonight, and I will reiterate again, this is a really important decision that we need to make together. I don't feel that we're at that point yet. And I'd suggest, even though I can't see the number of people in the gallery, I understand there's quite a few of you there, and I think that's testament and further evidence to the importance of this decision to you and to Paynesville. I'm also concerned that the lake and biodiversity values are not being duly considered, and I do agree with DECA and their recommendations that these studies be done prior to rezoning of the land, even though they're not opposed to the development plan overlay or the process proceeding. They do maintain that these studies should be done before the land is rezoned, so our local environment is appropriately cared for. And I think this principle that we should have the information prior to the rezoning in as much as is possible, and taking, it just rings true for so many other of the considerations and concerns that we've heard tonight, whether that's traffic or neighbourhood character or future housing densities and various other concerns. And I'm not confident that once the land is rezoned, that these considerations can be given the attention and the deliberation that they deserve. So I won't be supporting the officer's recommendation tonight. Thank you, Mayor.
Right of reply.
So if there's no more councillors wishing to speak, Councillor Buckley, you do have the right of reply.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Look, I want to acknowledge Councillor Crook and Councillor Eastman's concerns and the concerns of the people in the gallery. I think they're valid concerns. I think it's a great opportunity to, I guess, acknowledge that there are learnings along the way about how we do community consultation. In my short time, in my 5th year in this position, I think that we've gone ahead leaps and bounds in this space, and we're really trying very hard to address how we do things into the future and bring people along with us on the journey. So I'm the first to apologise to anyone who is here who feels that that hasn't been the case for them so far, and that by going to the next steps and supporting this motion, we will be able to offer you the next opportunity at a planning panel to do just that. I believe that we will also address, and we have taken heed of DECA's recommendations, and that those reports will be duly done to ensure that we have, I guess, carefully considered the environment. And I know that growth is painful, regardless of what it's, relative to. Change is difficult. And we also acknowledge that. So I have a lot of faith in our organisation and our community that we'll get this right, and I look forward to walking along the journey with my councillors, with the organisation and with the community, so that we can address those issues as they arise and find the best outcomes. So I'd like to thank all the councillors for the debate tonight, and I put it to the councillors to support the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. So that leads me to the vote. So all those in favour of the officer's report? All those against? Thank you, councillors. So it is passed 7 to 2 against for the records. Thank you. I'll just ask the question. I think the suggestion was to adjourn for a moment, but everybody's being incredibly respectful, and we as a group and council officers are appreciative of that. But Councillor Eastman, no, you're okay? Good. So I think we can keep moving, councillors, and those who now wish to leave, obviously you could do so, and quietly, thank you.
I need to go to the toilet. Yep.
Do we adjourn or just wait? Sorry. Yes.
Oops. Yeah.
Sorry about the pause, ladies and gentlemen, but this was a really big gallery, and there has been a transition, but there are still people here to probably listen to this next item. So I'm introducing item 5.1.2, and Councillor Cook has already signed off, so this is the item he's declared his conflict of interest for. So we are good to continue. But before the report is presented, I will now ask Ms Sandra McSweeney to come forward and make her submission. Mrs McSweeney, you do have 5 minutes of speaking time. Thank you. Welcome.
Okay, good. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for letting us give this presentation to you today. My husband and I are the owners of 30 Forge Creek Road, which is mentioned specifically in Amendment C171 Egypt. The proposed items directly relating to our property in the amendment are rezoning of our property from general residential zone to low-density residential with a minimum size lot of 4,000 square metres. Encourage pedestrian cycle connectivity, protect and enhance landscape, environment and ecological values, particularly in relation to Tyers Creek, Eagle Point Flora and Fauna Reserve and the Silt Jetties. The property at 30 Forge Creek Road has got two titles. One is 1.732 acres and one is 4.12 acres. Sorry, hectares. Pardon me. These two titles do have topographical constraints. They have a gully running between the two lots and a gully running along the northern boundary, which is adjacent to Tyers Creek. It is recognised that land supply for housing is a critical social need and will support growth of the community. Coordinated growth can provide social and economic benefits which will flow through the community. Leaving this property as general residential zoning will also be in line with the Victorian Government supply obligations to the of this shire. Leaving the current zoning in place will allow for a range of lot sizes and provide opportunities for a diverse range of housing types and lot sizes. The location of the property is adjacent to the existing residential properties on Forge Creek Road and close to Eagle Point Primary School, a short walk from the Foreshore precinct. As a fundamental pillar of the planning applications within the Shire, the Planning Department assess the lot sizes and makeup of any subdivision, taking into account all site constraints. So leaving the existing zoning in place will be of no additional burden to the Shire, and changing the zoning will restrict all further uses for the site. In the Eagle Point structure plan, it is indicated that the Shire will create a linear drainage reserve between our two titled allotments and create a pedestrian walkway on the land adjoining the linear drainage reserve, i.e. on our property. This linear drainage reserve will split our two parcels of land and will render the 4.12 hectare site landlocked. Should the decision ever be made if we were to downsize and try and sell off one of these parcels of land? We have never entered into any agreement or understanding that we would give this land up for public use and have concerns as to how this linear drainage reserve and the pedestrian walkway would be maintained. We've been in discussions with the Shire now for over 13 years regarding this perceived drainage reserve. The water that flows through the proposed reserve is primarily made up of stormwater directed to our property line from two subdivisions, Eagle Bay Rise and the newly created Woodman Place subdivisions. From both of these subdivisions, we receive approximately 50% of the total stormwater piped directly to our property line. The waterway drainage reserve will be a substitute for proper stormwater infrastructure that has not ever been managed by proper draining controls, where developers should be responsible for the runoff water. As our property also adjoins the Tyers Creek waterway, the statement that the Shire wants to protect and enhance the waterway comes as a surprise. In the 30 years of ownership of our property, the Shire has undertaken no action to enhance or protect the waterway that we have witnessed. It is currently a stagnant swamp, an area that's overgrown with love grass, and the creek is not free-flowing as the pipes that have the outfall to the Mitchell River have been blocked for those 30 years. In the Shire attachment 5.1.2.3, the Shire correctly state that our property has some site constraints. However, we are puzzled regarding the significant vegetation mentioned in the attachment. We have some very old black wattle which die and fall over regularly, and the proposed linear drainage reserve and other trees of significance are on the side of gullies where building cannot take place because it's not practical. In conclusion, we recommend that this amendment amendment be abandoned as it is an unnecessary action by the Shire, who have already sufficient mechanisms in place to ensure that appropriate development is sympathetic to the site constraints of our property and would support appropriate development in locations where existing residential allotments are in existence. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. So councillors, as you know, there's no discussion or debate, but does anyone have any clarification questions for Sandra?
Sandra, the response to your submissions, what's that been?
The response to
your submissions to the 171?
I haven't received any submission response apart from acknowledgement that I've sent in a submission.
Okay, that's not quite a question of clarification.
Oh, I was trying to... So I'm looking ahead at the proposal and I'm just wondering what...
Any other councillors have any clarification? Well, thank you very much for coming forward.
Thank you.
So our next speaker is Ms Lyndall Farrer, so I'd invite her to come forward, and you also have 5 minutes of speaking time. Thank you.
I might just get a drink of water first, if I may.
Oh, we'll hold the clock.
Thank you very much, I appreciate that. It's thirsty work, sitting there listening to the other items. Good evening, councillors and members of the executive. I'm here to talk to my submission that I made about the Eagle Point structure plan. I'll save councillors questions and advise that I also did not receive any feedback from my submission or notification or invitation to speak tonight. I relied on my neighbours to notify me that was the case. So I'm a resident of Eagle Point. My postcode is 3878 and that's the address that's on my rates notice. Unfortunately, my property and the neighbouring properties to me are not included in the Eagle Point structure plan, and that's the key basis of my concern that I bring to you this evening. Eagle Point structure plan, when I've spoken to council officers at consultation, they have told me that it's an urban growth plan, but that's not what it's called. I'm very disappointed to see that it seems to have been, the boundaries have been cherry-picked, not actually covering the entirety of Eagle Point, which takes up a large space of rural living zone. So as it stands now with the boundaries, it doesn't extend much further south than Paynesville Road, and it doesn't extend much further north towards the Silk Jetties, which I understand is also Eagle Point. So I think it's been poorly scoped, and it's missing some key opportunities that could be discovered if these areas were included. As we understand that the structure plan was created over 4 years ago, 5 years ago, 2019. That was pre-COVID, and we're living in quite a different area now to what we were in 2019. A lot of changes have happened, and a lot of changes have occurred in terms of the demographic and the people living in these areas. Growth has occurred more rapidly, I would suspect, and this plan does not address that, as it was created prior to this growth. As I understand, the state government has directives for council to seek opportunities to increase density, and in my case, our density is quite high, and we believe there's opportunities there to reduce those densities and still provide rural living opportunities, but on smaller allotments of 4,000 square metres or more. As I made a point earlier, the consultation has been poor, I believe. Many submissions, as noted in the council report, which I quickly sped read today once I got notification of the meeting, are based on issues with planning merit. They have been noted in the table, addressed in the report, but they haven't been, there hasn't been measures taken to address those concerns, which are based in planning merit. I understand, though, that if this goes to a panel, that there will be the opportunity to address those. I also question the scheduling of this being on the same night as the Paynesville structure plan, because this, I think, has overshadowed the Eagle Point structure plan, and giving it the attention that it also rightly deserves. I would urge councillors to abandon the proposed structure plan to enable the full review of Eagle Point, including all of Eagle Point's extents, and to enable a study to be done to discover what other opportunities there are in responding to the entirety of Eagle Point. Thank you.
Thank you. So, councillors, anybody with questions of clarification?
Sorry, did you say your property's not within the area covered by the structure plan?
No, but it is in Eagle Point. It's south of Paynesville Road, behind the golf club.
Oh, okay, that,
Yeah.
Yep.
So all that area south of Paynesville Road, to the extent of Newlands Backwater and Forge Creek, as I understand, is considered Eagle Point, but it hasn't been included.
Right, thank you.
Any other councillors? Okay, I see no more questions, so of clarification, so thank you very much for your presentation. Now, I'll ask Mr Luke Priestley to come forward and make his submission, and the same again. Mr Priestley, you have up to 5 minutes of speaking time. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for your time this evening. So I'm representing the RE family, and in essence, we would like to see the Eagle Point structure plan taken to the panel, but the family has the following points to make. Look, and tonight Albert would like to have been here, but we've just finished crutching, and he's 98, so, and he still gets up and works most days.
I trust he's worn out.
But, you know, that's the reality of farming. It doesn't stop. But the parcel of land the family owns is no longer a viable farming entity. And the family would like to state that the Eagle Point has never ended at the creek. And that's the creek that basically starts from McTaggart's Lane and runs down to over to Bay Road. The boundary of Eagle Point was always Grandview Road, which was changed to Waterview Road on the northern side of the Paynesville Road. So that was always been Eagle Point. And that's where the main farmhouse has stood from the RE family for 122 years. And that's only 200 metres from Waterview Road. So from the family's point of view, we can't keep farming. And over the years, we've worked really well with the council and what we believe has been in the best interest of the community for land development and change of use. So the main point is the RE family is we're looking forward to working with the council long-term in a constructive manner that will benefit the community. So thank you.
Thank you. Just, you've got a clarification?
I do.
Question?
I do indeed.
Good.
So I'm assuming that your land is a farming zone that's to go to GRZ?
No, not at this stage.
What's it go to? LDRZ, does it?
Well, a lot of it's public open space and...
Okay, so I'm trying to think of where it is on the map.
It's directly across from the golf course. As you're driving towards Paynesville on the left-hand side, that's... You're driving to Paynesville, hit the golf course, left-hand side, that's the...
But you're expecting it to be rezoned to be developed, is that correct?
Well, that's what when we go to the panel, there'll be a submission and we want to work with the council and they're...
Okay,
yep.
That's fine. So just a clarification, if your land is rezoned, does that... I don't know how to ask the question, sorry. Your land being rezoned, does that affect any of the other land being rezoned or not?
with the rest of Eagle Point?
Yeah,
I don't think so.
thank you.
Any other councillors? Okay, no, thanks. Thank you, Luke.
And respects to the old boy that's in his 90s and still working. That's quite impressive.
Now, I'll ask Mr Stevenson now, could you please present your report? If you're still okay, you feel you're going all right?
I'm good, thank you.
Good,
thank you. If I do break down, I'll pass the notes over to someone else. So before you is a report which requests that Council refer Planning Scheme Amendment C171 EGIP to an independent planning panel. The Planning Scheme Amendment seeks to implement the Eagle Point Structure Plan into the East Gippsland Planning Scheme by updating the planning controls for particular areas and updating planning policy for Eagle Point. In summary, the officer's recommendation is that the Council requests the Minister for Planning to appoint a planning panel to consider all submissions received. Some key points for consideration are the amendment proposes moderate changes to the planning scheme to ensure that the preferred character of Eagle Point is protected into the future. The amendment is based on a structure plan adopted by Council that was prepared with substantial community consultation. The amendment establishes a settlement boundary for the Eagle Point Township and encourages incremental growth within this boundary. It also proposes the rezoning of a parcel of land at 25 Waterview Road, adjacent to the Eagle Point Road, to general residential to enable incremental growth, the rezoning of land in the Matheson's Road /Forge Creek Road precinct to rural living to protect the existing character of the area, and the rezoning of land at 30 Forge Creek Road to low density residential to reflect environmental constraints. The amendment has been through a 10-week public exhibition process and 18 submissions were received. Referral to a planning panel will enable all submissions to be considered through an independent public process where the panel will make recommendations to Council regarding the amendment. If a planning panel is appointed, the panel will prepare a report after the hearing process and this report will be brought before Council at a future Council meeting for consideration. This process is consistent with the legislation and provides further opportunity for Council to make recommendations to the Minister for Planning on the amendment. Kalindi and Martin are present again and this report is presented to you for your consideration. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. So, councillors, are there any questions of the officers regarding clarification? Yes, Councillor Eastman.
Do you need to ask?
I saw the light. I saw the light come on.
Thank you. In relation to 30 Forge Creek Road and the rezoning from GRZ to LDRZ, can you clarify for me if there are constraints on being able to put a house on a block because of the way it's, you know, it's geomorphology or contours or whatever? Would that normally be covered under a planning permit thing? Like, do you need to rezone to stop building houses where the landscape isn't really suitable?
So just to be clear, the current zone and the proposed zone will not stop subdivision or development subject to a planning permit. What the recommendation is, it recognises the site is quite constrained in terms of access and the drainage lines, and bushfire risk was another consideration because it's quite close to the Flora and Fauna Reserve. And for that reason, it was recommended that the land be rezoned to low density residential zone. So there's still subdivision potential and dwellings can still be put there just at a lesser density than what would be allowed under the general residential zone. Did that answer?
It's sort of, because the reasoning given was that there was recognition that there were constraints on the land and therefore it was rezoned. And I guess I'm trying to tease out whether the planning permit process would stop inappropriate building anyway, without having to rezone?
The reason for the rezoning is that, so we're not talking about a planning permit process as in someone building a house, we're talking about subdivision. So there's about 6 or 7 hectares of land there. It's got significant subdivision potential. The proposal to rezone it is to recognise that a subdivision in a general residential zone would be heavily constrained by these environmental constraints. And the view put when the structure plan was prepared by independent consultants, the view put was that the site was not suitable for general residential development because of those constraints. So the proposal to rezone it to low density residential still allows for future subdivision to occur, but larger lots and thus less pressure on those constraints.
I guess
it's not about whether they can build a house or not, it's actually the development, it's actually whether or not, what form a new subdivision would take. Yeah.
Which that sort of limitation or whatever would have come under a normal planning permit application process anyway, wouldn't it? Like building or subdividing. I guess my question is, wouldn't that have been captured in a normal planning permit thing rather than rezoning?
It would have, but the likely outcome, if the residential zone stays in place, the likely outcome is that someone will lodge an application for subdivision of 700 and 800 square metre lots, and our response will be that that is entirely inappropriate. And we'd be saying, no, you cannot possibly subdivide that down to 700 or 800 square metre lots given the constraints. So the challenge that we would have if the zoning stays in place is that it's likely that a standard residential subdivision would simply not be acceptable, and we'd be in this conflict with the landowner saying we cannot possibly support an application of that type. We'd really rather see 2,000 square metre size lots. So that's why the low density zone is preferred, because we believe that's the appropriate zone for land which has these constraints.
Thank you. Councillor Buckley?
Thank you.
Question?
Yes, I do have a question. It's been mentioned in regards to the boundaries. Can you just elaborate and give an explanation in regards to why the boundaries were put where they were, and the ones that have been mentioned, will they be considered under some other scope at some other time? If you could just elaborate.
Thanks, Councillor. So the boundaries for the scoping of the Eagle Point Structural Plan were essentially the village of Eagle Point. So there's a locality called Eagle Point which stretches far and wide, some kilometres away. But we would not prepare a structure plan for areas that are in the farming zone or the rural living zone. The idea was to provide a structure plan for what was recognised by most people as the town of Eagle Point, notwithstanding that the locality of Eagle Point stretches much further. Now, the properties referred to by the submitter in relation to Lake Victoria Road are somewhat remote from the town of Eagle Point, and they're in the rural living zone. Yeah. So you wouldn't normally prepare a structure plan for land within the rural living zone because structure plans are primarily for urban areas. However, as we have discussed with the councillors in recent times, the area within Lake Victoria Road that has been raised is an area that we are likely to look at for review of the schedules of the rural living zone to see whether or not those schedules are appropriate and whether or not there's the opportunity for more close subdivision. So we've spoken to the councillors about a review for the rural living zone where there are some areas with a minimum lot size, and we could potentially look at changing those schedules to reduce that minimum lot size. But that's not a structure planning exercise, it's simply a potential amendment that could see further opportunity for development.
Thanks for that clarification. In regards to the McSweeney property, there was discussion around the potential for the Eagle Point, the other document that we were looking at earlier today. What was that called? Councillor Isman, can you help me? It's the Eagle Point structure plan. Yeah, that precinct structure plan. I just want to see clarification that on that is not. It's ideas. It's not necessarily what's going to be taking place.
Yep. So within the Eagle Point structure plan, there are a number of precincts defined as change areas, and there are conceptual schematic diagrams that show how they might be developed in the future. So there's by no means a proposal that we would force that development on a landowner. What the structure plan says is it identifies these change areas and says here is a concept for how the area could be developed in the future, and that would guide discussions with applicants about subdivision. So the reference that's made for this property to to creation of reserves on drainage reserves and all those sorts of things. That would be the normal discussion we would have with a subdivision applicant. We do not intend to go in and acquire land from that property owner. What we would do, given that the property owner looks like they want to subdivide the land, and even in a low density zone, you're probably talking 20 or 30 lots, we would require that it's a designated waterway. We would require the designated waterway to have a buffer, a corridor provided around it, and for the land to be reserved for public use because it would become a drainage waterway. That's normal practice. So we're not proposing to go in and take land from the owner. We're saying that when the owner seeks to subdivide and create new lots, there would be normal conditions of approval that would require that land to be ceded to council because it's a waterway. And also there would be a requirement for stormwater areas to be provided in reserves. So it's not about us saying we're going to come and take your land. It's about saying if you want to subdivide, then these would be the kinds of conditions that would apply to the development of the land. But it's not locked in stone.
One just supplementary question. Does the changes that we're proposing affect the as of rights titles of the landowners?
Planning is all about property rights. That's all it's about. So a proposed rezoning from general residential to low density residential will reduce the lot yield for that subdivision. But that's done on the basis of the public interest because there are environmental concerns that we would have, and we would find it very difficult to manage a subdivision within the general residential zone for that property. But yes, it will change property rights. That's what planning does.
Another question? Yes.
Two. First one, if the McSweeney's or any of the other people being affected by the point 2 to point 4 as of right thing, I presume that's still going ahead. If they were to sell their land or try to sell their land, what sort of Section 32 thing, particularly for the McSweeney's, would need to be in place to show that you were saying that they had to consider ceding their land to council because of the drainage?
We're not saying that they will need to consider ceding their land to council. We're saying that if a subdivision application came in on a property with a designated waterway on it, the first thing the Catchment Management Authority would say is we want a 30-metre buffer each side of that waterway. Now that land is useless to the private landowner and they wouldn't want it because they've got to manage it. So what we're currently doing, and we're doing it in another part of Eagle Point, currently with the RE family and their representatives, is we're saying there's a designated waterway that runs through part of your land that you want to subdivide. The best outcome is for that to be designated as a public reserve for stormwater management and waterway management and ceded to council. That's a standard practice for subdivision conditions. We're not going in and just acquiring land for the sake of it. We're saying the land serves no private purpose, it serves a public purpose, therefore it should be owned and managed by the council. And most landowners happily give up that land because it's no value to them at all. 30 metres each side of a waterway.
Okay, my second question. So the reasoning behind the GRZ to LDRZ for the McSweeney's is because of what can realistically be done with subdivision. But the reasoning for point 2 to point 4 for LDRZ is different in terms of the changes?
Yeah, so the reasoning for the change to hold the LDRZ land to a minimum lot size of 4,000 square metres is largely based on neighbourhood character. So the structure plan goes into quite a lot of detail about character, and the consultation processes from that also revealed that the community at the time would like to see slightly larger lot sizes. There's also, Eagle Point, as we know, is quite vegetated, and that's some of the beauty of it, and part of that is to keep some larger lots and not have that sort of density so that those trees and roadside vegetation can be retained. So it is largely about character rather than constraints in that case.
So, okay, I'll wait.
Thank you. Oh, there's another question over there, is there?
Yes.
No? No, thank you, Mayor. It's relative to that particular question. So if an amendment was made to bring it back into the normal state requirements at point 2, that doesn't mean that it'll necessarily happen. That would be at the discretion of the landowner.
Correct. So subdivision is subject to a planning permit, and part of that is looking at the site layout and constraints, services available, how they get access, so where the house is placed. So for all sorts of reasons, not every lot can perfectly be subdivided into a minimum lot size.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. From the chair, I would actually like to ask a question, if that's okay. Yes, through the chair. The three presenters tonight have all got, I believe, some significant issues. So if this is passed tonight, especially yourself, that you're not actually in the zone, are they still able to proceed to the panel to put their case? And also, do council officers, i.e. the planners, at the panel, do you actually submit opposition to certain proposals, or do you just sit back and let the panel make a decision?
Well, we do sit back and let the panel make a decision, but we try to influence the decision on behalf of council. So the three submitters that are presented will all have the opportunity to go to panel and make their submissions, because they have lodged valid submissions. In each of those cases, they would need to demonstrate to the panel that there's some substance to their submission. In the case of McTaggart's Road, they'd need to demonstrate to the panel that the geographic scope of the Eagle Point Structure Plan should be significantly widened. I suspect the panel might be reluctant to do that, because then they'd say, well, how far do we go? That is every property within 2 kilometres of Eagle Point or in that locality. So look, but they would be able to make that submission about geographic scope. The submission from the McSweeneys will certainly be a very valid point to make to the panel. We're proposing to rezone their land, and that's what panels consider. Is it appropriate to rezone it or is it not? And in the case of Luke's commentary on behalf of the RE family, if they want to go to the panel and argue that the entire RE property should be rezoned from farming to residential, they can give it their best shot. Our view will be to represent council's historic position on these matters and what makes sense from a planning point of view. In each of those cases, we would be saying we don't think it's appropriate to broaden the geographic scope of the Eagle Point Structure Plan to cover rural areas. We've already made council officers' positions clear on the rezoning of 30 Forge Creek Road, and our view is historically that the community benefit from maintaining a rural buffer between Paynesville and Eagle Point is quite significant. And we do recognise, though, that the Eagle Point Structure Plan does provide for the rezoning of part of the RE property. So our position would be pretty much set by previous council policy and existing policy, and the positions that have been put within the planning amendment documentation.
No, thank you for that answer and clarification. So obviously the answer is that they will not be excluded from the panel and submitting. So I think, because I've listened carefully to their submissions, and that was why I asked the question.
And on that point, I just want to apologise if you felt you didn't get a direct letter. There were some submissions that were written on behalf of consultants or groups. Potentially that's where yours got caught up, but I'm happy for you to contact me tomorrow and we can make sure your details are registered so you are included specifically.
Sorry, final question, please, John.
One last one.
With the RE property, that's going to GRZ, is it?
Only a part of it.
Part of it? Okay, part of it. Was there any consideration of taking that to LDRZ instead, to sort of maintain that sort of gradual transition?
It's actually separated from the LDRZ and it abuts general residential zone. It's actually quite a small parcel as well, and it's unconstrained largely. So that's why the general residential zone was applied. It's one of the recommendations of the Eagle Point Structure Plan, and it made sense because it keeps the general residential zone going from north to south and then stops at the waterway, which is the natural, where we've put the settlement boundary.
Okay, thank you. So that leaves me to So there is a recommendation in this report. So I'll now call on any councillor to move a motion. Councillor Buckley.
Yes, look, thank you, Mayor, for this opportunity. Yeah, look, I think everything that I said... Oh, sorry, yeah. Apologies. Yeah, I move the motion.
Oh, right, thank you. Yeah, you dropped me right in it, thank you. Councillor.
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
The recommendation.
The recommendation, the officer's recommendation.
Yeah.
Apologies.
So, and
A bit
Councillor
tired,
Allen has
jet-lagged.
seconded. Yes, well, just a little bit after this, I think we'll probably be moving a motion to extend the meeting.
Yeah, can I just seek clarification, Mayor? I am actually moving a motion that's amended. Yeah. So do you want me to speak to that?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes,
that's what I was about to do. Can you bring that up on the up on the screen? So, and shall I read out all of it, or just the amended motion? Yeah. So, point 4 and 5 endorses the officer's response to the issues raised by the submissions and the recommended changes to Amendment C171 EGIP, as outlined in Attachment 1 and 4, as the basis of Council's submission to the planning panel, with the exception of the induction of the proposed Schedule 2 to the low-density residential zone. 5, authorises the General Manager to Manager, Place and Community to make any changes required to remove the proposed Schedule 2 to the low-density residential zone from Amendment C171 EGIP and any other minor changes which are consistent with the purpose and intent of Council's resolution. And the rest remains the same. Thank you.
Thank you. You concur with that? Good, thanks. Thank you. So, then we go to, you would like to speak now?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mayor. So firstly, I want to say to the people in the gallery and all of the people of Eagle Point that what I stated earlier that was relevant to the Paynesville development is also relevant to this, that I understand that there will be learnings in ensuring that we get community consultation right, that this is just the first step in ensuring that your voices are heard and that there's opportunities into the future to be able to state your case to the panel, and that will come back to us to make further consideration and amendments upon the recommendation of the panel. And it also allows, the council at some point in the future that they can determine whether they want to proceed forward or make further amendments. So I'm moving this amendment to ensure that Eagle Point is treated fairly and consistently in line with the rest of the Shire when it comes to minimum lot sizes in the low-density residential zone. At the heart of this is simple but important. Eagle Point is a sewered area, and under our planning scheme, sewered areas in the low-density residential zones are subject to a 2,000 square metre minimum lot size. The proposed amendment as it stands would apply to a 4,000 square metre minimum, which is actually the standard for unsewered areas. My motion seeks to remove the proposed schedule that introduces 4,000 square metre minimum, and this would return Eagle Point to the standard 2,000 square metre minimum, bringing it into alignment with every other sewered low-density residential area across East Gippsland. Now, I want to acknowledge that we did hear from some members of Eagle Point community who expressed a preference for larger lots to preserve a sense of space and rural character, and those views matter. And I thank the residents for their considered submissions. But it's also true that other landowners and residents believe that keeping the 2,000 square metre minimum is more equitable, allowing for appropriate sensitive subdivision in keeping with what they expect when they invested in this area. Importantly, a 2,000 square metre lot size still ensures a spacious low-density character. We're not talking about high-density development or urban sprawl. This is about giving landowners a fair and consistent planning framework while still preserving the overall character that makes Eagle Point special. And this amendment supports a balanced outcome, one that reflects the standards in our planning scheme, ensures consistency across the municipality and responds to diverse community views. I commend the amendment to council and I thank my fellow councillors for considering it in the spirit of fairness. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. Councillor Allen?
Thank you, Mayor. Look, this is exactly the same as the last item. This is the opportunity for the community to go to an independent panel and have their submissions heard, and I think that that's vitally important.
Thank you. So, does anyone wish to speak against this motion? No? Okay. I'm just looking. Councillor Farquhar's got quite small on the screen, so I was just checking it out. So anyone else wishing to speak for? Councillor Eastman.
I think Councillor Buckley for the motion. I think it gives us a much fairer outcome than would have been the case otherwise. I think that we'll find maybe less people heading to the panel and the situation being resolved a lot quicker as a result. I'm obviously disappointed because we haven't been able to look at the McSweeney's situation, but I think it leads to a fairer outcome for them too. So I'm happy to support the motion as it is. Yeah.
Thank you. No one else? All right, well, I guess we can put this to the vote. So all those in favour of the amendment. So that is, and there's,
yep.
Yes, I see him there. Thank you. So that's unanimous. Officers? And thank you, Martin and Kalindi. And
thank you.
Yes. We just have to pause for a moment to get Councillor Cook back online. Sorry. Something you prepared earlier.
I think he's on already. Can you see what he's at? Yeah.
Just welcome back. Oh, well done, Councillor Cook. Welcome back. So I'm taking this slight pause to suggest that somebody resolves to extend the meeting by 1 hour.
I second it.
All right, Councillor Allen, Councillor Buckley. Would you like to speak to the motion?
The less I speak, the less we need it.
Do I get a likewise from Councillor Buckley?
Yes, that's good.
So all those in favour? Do you know what I forgot to do? I forgot to ask did anyone oppose it.
No.
Oh, okay. All right, I got out of that one. Okay, so we have extended the meeting now for 1 hour, and we should move on straight away to item 5.1.3, which is the Economic Development Advisory Committee unconfirmed minutes of meeting held 12th December 2024. So, Mr. Stevenson, would you please present your report?
Thank you, Mayor. Not a lot to present on this one, just the report provides Council with the unconfirmed minutes of the Economic Development Advisory Committee on the 12th of September 2024, and the attachment there is the meeting minutes, noting they're still unconfirmed because we did not have a quorum at the last Economic Development Committee meeting.
Okay, thank you. So does anyone have any questions? You do?
No.
Do you?
Oh,
No?
well, one quick question. Have we addressed the quorum issues so that that we'll be able to ensure that the committee is able to reform into the future?
Yeah, so we're looking into that at the moment, Councillor, and also what is the appropriate forum, whether we've got it right, whether we need to make amendments to that, the way we go about it. So that's something we'll need to bring back to Council for some advice. We'll bring some recommendations forward.
Yes, thank you. Thanks very much.
All right, if there are no more questions, do we have a mover? All right. Councillor Davis, a seconder? Yes, Councillor Buckley. So, all right, so Councillor Davis, you wish to speak?
No, Mayor.
What about yourself, Councillor
No,
Buckley?
Mayor. Just thank you for receiving the report.
Okay, so I think I'll first ask, is the motion opposed? No?
No.
I don't know whether I've gone backwards here, but the way Fiona's looking at me possibly. All those in favour? Oh, yes, Councillor Crook's put his hand up. Okay, so that's unanimous, officers. So 5.2.1. This is the Sarsfield Recreation Reserve and Community Hall Revitalisation Project. So I'll now ask General Manager of Assets Environment, Stuart McConnell, to please present your report. Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you, Mayor. So, councillors, before you use a report, I'm asking you to award a contract for appointment of an experienced contractor to deliver the Sarsfield Recreation Reserve and Community Hall project. This is a really significant project. It's one of the projects which is essentially, it's a bushfire recovery initiated project, although it was ultimately, I should acknowledge, the funding was through the Commonwealth Government's Community Development Program in the end. It's been a project that has been really important to the Sarsfield community. The existing hall was an important base both for the Sarsfield community in responding to the 1925s, and it has also been important in all the time since as a gathering place, etc. However, the existing hall is tired and has some structural issues, and so rather than renovation, the decision was made by the committee to seek a new hall building. The Rec Reserve Committee of Management and the Sarsfield Community Association have asked council's assistance to project manage this, so this is effectively a project we're managing on behalf of the community rather than it being a council asset. But it's important, it'll provide a multi-purpose community centre with that sort of flexible meeting space and so on to be able to host functions and include a commercial kitchen and various other improvements around the reserve. So, councillors, there's been extensive consultation that's gone into the design, etc. We've been through a normal tender process. Attached to this report is the tender evaluation panel report. Just a reminder that's confidential, so if you want to ask questions around that, we'll need to move into the confidential part of the meeting. But councillors, you've got a recommendation in front of you, and if you have any questions, happy to answer those. I note Mark Tickner is available for us to assist online. Mark's been the project supervisor working on this project, and Noel Kiernan is also available to assist as required. Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart. So, councillors, any questions of clarification on this report? I see none. So, would there be a councillor who would like to move a motion? Councillor Davis. Okay, so we should get something up on the screen. There we go. So could you please complete the blanks? Not yet.
I think you need a second.
Not yet?
Yeah, okay.
Not yet.
Okay, we'll populate it first.
Yes. Please. We need to populate the screen first before I ask for a seconder. So if you could populate that screen, please. Councillor Davis, you got the detail there?
I'd like to move a motion that council accepts the tender submitted by Brooker Builders Proprietary Limited for CON 2025-1722 Sarsfield Recreation Reserve and Community Hall Revitalisation Project for the contract amount of $3,170,892, exclusive of GST. Authorise the Chief Executive Officer or delegate to finalise the terms and to sign the contract in the form proposed, and resolves that confidential attachment 1 to this report, and all discussions relating to the attachment remain confidential.
Good, thank you. I'd just ask you to just look at the screen and just confirm that that is exactly what you asked, to fill in the gaps.
Yes. Yep.
Good. Okay. So, now, do I have a seconder? Councillor Travascus.
Yeah.
All right. Now, Councillor Davis, would you like to speak to this wonderful project?
Yeah, just obviously well-needed project and great for the Sarsfield community. I've been lucky enough to do quite a bit of work out there myself, and I think it'll be very well received by the community and now and into the future. And yeah, also support the use of a local contractor to have the works carried out as well.
Thank you. Councillor Travascus.
Yeah, I think that area needs something like it up there, so it's well worth it, I reckon. Thank you.
Good. So, is the motion opposed? I see nobody. Anyone else wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Buckley.
Thank you. Well, what a wonderful moment for Sarsfield. There's been some challenges along the way, which I acknowledge, and I also like to thank the Shire for supporting the community and getting this project eventually underway, and they've been very patient. I think there's no better place for small communities than to have a community hall and a recreation reserve. They're the heartbeat, just like our libraries are. These spaces are so important for gathering, for safe spaces and for community to have. So I just want to support Councillor Davis in moving this motion, and Travascus, the importance to small communities and having this money funnelled into those small communities to keep the heartbeat going of those places alive means a lot to me as a council representative. So I'm really pleased that this is on the table tonight, and I hope that it goes smoothly and that Brookers do a terrific job. And I look forward to seeing the finished project. Thank you.
So do we have anyone else who wishes to speak to the motion? I see none, so I think we will put this to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you, councillors. That is also unanimous. Now we move on to Business Excellence Directorate's reports, and the first report is item 5.3.1 to award Geographic Information System, or GIS, panel of providers contract collaborative procurement with Wellington Shire. So I'll now ask General Manager of Business Excellence, Sarah Johnson, to please present your report.
Many thanks, Mayor. As you've just stated, that's the report in front of you all for consideration. So the key points for the report is that Council has partnered with Wellington Shire Council in a shared services arrangement since 2015. It's delivered a whole lot of great things for us: cost efficiencies, streamlined services, processes and functions. Our current GIS system is end of life and is using a significantly outdated software. This is identified as part of the ICT strategy that has been presented to this councillor group. It's also part of our digital transformation, and a modern GIS platform will have many benefits which are outlined in the report. The collaborative procurement is undertaken between Wellington and us for the provision of the upgraded GIS, and it's aligned to the Local Government Victoria's Rural Council Transformation Program, which encourages the same things: sharing knowledge, sharing costs and resources at a regional scale. The panel of suppliers established for the supply of suitably qualified vendors would support both councils in the provision of GIS services, and the panel arrangements needed to facilitate the collaborative approach because it mitigates the risk of the councils being vendor locked and dependent on a single provider. So this is what the project working group has said, the different panel of different providers to be able to provide those different skill sets are both about across both councils. Also present tonight, and he's still here, is our Chief Information Officer, Phil Philippou. So welcome, Phil, and he's here if we have any other questions. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you and welcome, Phil. So Councillors, any questions for officers? Councillor Buckley.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. I always like to ask you questions because you're always very kind in your answers. So can you just further point out to me and the councillors about the positive aspects that will come in regards to this proposal, and just widen that a little bit for me, please?
Thank you, Councillor Buckley, and through you, Mayor. The opportunity to align our systems with Wellington Shire Council through this project will really allow us to achieve efficiencies by sharing the skills and expertise across GIS, and we haven't previously been able to do that because we have two different systems and they're both proprietary systems, so it makes it really hard for us to resource that mapping services. So by doing it with Wellington, we'll be able to leverage and work together so we can get not only procurement efficiencies, but alignment of systems and processes in the GIS space, which will allow us to make mapping more effective for us and more efficient and more accessible for our community.
Excellent, thank you.
Councillor Eastman.
Yeah, thanks for that, Phil. That's interesting. Can you tell me if the range of providers there will help us align our systems and processes with other organisations or agencies like DECA or the CMA or anything like that for future?
Thank you, Councillor Eastman, and through you, Mayor. We're hoping that the end system that we do have will provide us not an integration but alignment of those systems, and certainly the ArcGIS system, mapping system, which is a global standard, will align with a lot of other state government agencies as well.
Sorry, final one. Are we using ArcGIS Pro or ArcGIS?
I believe it'll be Pro, but that'll be determined as we move through the project. But I believe it will certainly be the commercialised version for local government if that is the final piece to the puzzle that's added in that mapping service.
Thank you.
Any other councillors wishing to ask questions? All right, that's fine. So there is a recommendation in the report, so I'll call on any councillor to move a motion. Councillor Eastman? Good. So, as you've moved the motion, can you please complete the blanks?
Do you want them completed before I read it? Oh, okay. I'd like to move a motion that Council approves Wellington Shire Council to award contract number 2025-064, Geographical Information System, GIS Services, panel of providers on behalf of East Gippsland Shire for a 3-year period to the following: COHGA Proprietary Limited, ESRI, ESRI Australia Proprietary Limited, Technology One Proprietary Limited, Woolpert Australia Proprietary Limited, and for consultancy services only, GP1 Proprietary Limited. The Council approves and authorises the Chief Executive Officer or Delegate to execute such documents as are necessary to give effect to the arrangements of the Geographical Information System, GIS Services, Panel of Providers Contract 2025-064. The Council delegates power to the Chief Executive Officer to exercise the 2 extension options of 1 year on the basis that all contractual requirements have been met by the suppliers, and the Council resolves that confidential attachment 1 to this report and all discussions relating to that attachment remain confidential.
Thank you. So could you please confirm, by looking at the screen, that that is what you read
It is.
out?
Yep.
Good, thank you. So do we have a seconder? Gee, I can hardly... Oh, he's waving. He hasn't got the yellow hand. Thanks, Tom. Thank you for seconding. So, would you like to speak to this motion, Councillor Eastman?
Very briefly. I'm really pleased for all the staff at East Gippsland Shire and councillors too that we're finally making progress in the GIS space. Looking forward to seeing how it works out for everyone and how effective and efficient it's going to allow us to be in the way we work with Wellington Shire and other agencies in the rollout. So well done, everyone.
Thank you. Councillor Crook.
Oh, yes, thanks, Mayor. Look, this is a welcome development in our GIS capability. The shared services agreements obviously yielded great benefit to our council and Wellington already, and this is an extension of that. Fantastic to see that we are finally moving into the 21st century with industry standard geographical information systems that will provide us with the opportunity to align a whole bunch of different information in the one package where you can overlay that, and it will hopefully lead to better decisions and better outcomes.
Good, thanks, Councillor Crook. So is the motion opposed? Okay, would anyone else like to speak for the motion? Councillor Buckley?
I'm really excited. Thanks, Mayor. This is terrific. And I concur with the other councillors.
I'm just wondering who's going to go first. Who's going to use it if it gets passed? All right. So I would now put the motion to the vote. So all those in favour? Again, officers? That is unanimous. Thank you for that. Thank you, Phil. So our next report, also with Ms Johnson, is the endorse the revised Audit and Risk Committee Charter. So would you like to present your report, please?
Yeah, many thanks again, Mayor. As you've outlined, this report is seeking endorsement of the Audit and Risk Committee Charter, which has been recently updated following a recommendation by the Audit and Risk Committee. Key points for your consideration. So, Council is required under Section 54(1) of the Local Government Act to adopt an Audit and Risk Committee Charter that specifies the functions and responsibilities of the committee. Section 1.6M of the Charter requires the committee to formally review its charter within 12 months of a general election or otherwise as required. So an extensive review of this particular charter was undertaken in 2022, which provided clarity on the roles and responsibilities of the committee. That was driven by a committee performance review. The committee at its meeting on the 24th of Feb this year recommended a minor change relating to one of the sections, being the removal of Section 1.4b, which was felt to be restrictive as it limited the number of terms that an independent member can serve as a chair. It's also worth noting that the Council's current charter is published on the Local Government Inspectorate's website as a good practice example for other councils to follow, along with a number of other charters from other councils. When this particular amendment was considered, a benchmark of other Audit and Risk Committee charters from other local governments was considered, and the ones that we did look at didn't have this particular section restricting the chair term and follow through. So I am now presenting the report to you, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillors, any questions or clarification? Nothing on the screen also, so I see none. So the recommendation in the report, so I'll now call on any councillor to move a motion. Councillor Davis, and also could I call for a seconder? Right, Councillor Allen. So would you like to speak, Councillor Davis, to the motion?
No, thanks, Mayor.
Councillor Allen.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, they're minor changes. When this was presented to us first, I actually questioned it, but the explanation that Sarah provided has convinced me that this is worth supporting.
Well, thank you for those words. So is the motion opposed? I see none. Anyone else wish to speak to this motion? Well, it's all going well. So I'll put this motion to the vote. All those in favour? Again, another unanimous decision. Thank you. Good thing we extended I think there's only a minute left and we're not going to get through 2 more items in that time. So talk quick. Okay, I shouldn't have said anything, should I? So 5.3.3, a proposal for local government commissioner role, Rural Councils Victoria. So Ms Johnson, could you please present your report?
Yeah, thank you again, Mayor. So the particular proposal that is in report in front of you is that we write to the Australian Government post the May 25 election expressing its support of Rural Councils Victoria's call for a new local government commissioner role to be established, and further advocating that the position holder be required to be based in a rural area so that they have a deep connection to rural issues and the community. This particular report that's in front of you is a response to a notice of motion that was put up in December last year by Councillor Buckley. So RCV is already advocating for the establishment of a commissioner and would advocate for the rural communities to ensure their unique issues and specific needs are represented appropriately at a federal level. So this is about bridging the gap between rural councils and the Australian government because we'd have better communication and a deeper understanding of rural issues. Again, I'll reiterate that the proposal is for this particular commissioner to operate rurally so that they do have that connection. Given that the resolution was in December, officers have already incorporated this desire into the advocacy platform that is part of our ongoing advocacy development piece, and that has already been presented by one Gippsland representatives in a visit to Canberra on the 18th of March. The report is now presented for your consideration.
Thank you. Councillor Buckley, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you. And thank you very much for the report. My question is around the advocacy position. Can you tell me if there's been any public endorsement by any candidates in the upcoming election to support this proposal or any feedback at all in regards to the advocacy that's been done by One Gippsland or RCV and ourselves?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Buckley. Just let me grab some notes that I've got up here on that one. So not publicly. The answer is that we don't publicly have any endorsement of the particular position at the moment, but I suppose the key part here too is it's not through lack of trying, and that's through the advocacy that we've been doing, but it's also been through the discussions with various different members of Parliament. So my understanding is that RCV have spoken to the likes of Senator Raf Kikone, I'm going to pronounce that incorrectly. That's it, I knew that. Thank you. Nola Marino, Senator Jana Stewart, Mr Simon Kent, so a group of advisors, Dr Anne Webster, Riley Geary, one of the other senior advisors, Catherine King, and Darren Chester, and finally Sam Birrell. So there's been a series of different members of Parliament and others that RCV have been talking to at length about this particular proposal.
Yet no commitments so far.
Yet no commitments so far.
Thank you for that. Disappointed.
Any other questions? I see none. So why did you turn your microphone off, Councillor Buckley? Because I'm going to call for somebody to move. Yes. So no one else was going to get to do that, were they? So it's moved by Councillor Buckley. So do I have a seconder? Councillor Travascus, thank you. So I'm sure you'd like to speak.
Thank you. So, yes, thanks very much. Thank you, Mayor. And as someone who lives and works on the land every day, I rise today in strong support of Rural Councils Victoria's proposal to establish a local government commissioner. Now, this role that would give rural communities like ours a real respected voice at a national level. Here in East Gippsland, we know what it's like to be at the mercy of natural disasters and at times at the mercy of distant decision makers. After the Black Summer fires, places like W-Tree, Buchan and Sarsfield were left picking up the pieces. In fact, most of us were, in one way or another. Our communities were strong, but the systems meant to support them weren't always easy to navigate. Too much red tape, too many delays, and not enough understanding of the realities on the ground. That's why this proposal matters. A commissioner based in rural areas, living it, breathing it, and not just visiting for a photo opportunity, can help bridge the gap between councils like ours and Canberra. They'd understand that disaster recovery isn't just about dollars, it's about timing, trust, and tailored solutions. They'd also help rural councils access funding, cut through bureaucratic blockages, and ensure our needs aren't drowned out by louder metropolitan voices. Rural people are resilient, but we're tired of having to shout to be heard. A commissioner grounded in community would give us a direct line to federal decision makers, and better still, someone who gets it because they live it. And we've already taken important steps through One Gippsland's recent visit to Canberra and through our federal election advocacy platform. Now it is time to stand united with other rural councils and formally lend our support. And this isn't just a policy idea, it's a practical solution, and it's the kind of leadership that rural Australia deserves. So I hope that the people standing for our federal election, this upcoming election, will support this and make it an election promise. And I hope that the councillors this evening will support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. Councillor Travascus, would you wish to speak?
Yes, I think we need a voice to Canberra in this sort of form as well. For instance, the viaduct at Orbost there, the rail trail. We always thought, you know, going past, you'd think, what's going on here? Why didn't they spend the money in the first place to do the whole viaduct instead of spending money on car parks and all that sort of stuff? But one lot was state money and the other lot was federal money, and the federal didn't want to go where the state was. So if we had a little bit more contact with the federal, maybe they would have bent their ideas on where they were going to fund, and it might have been quite different. Might have had less car parks and more viaduct.
Thank you. So does anyone oppose this motion? Okay, I see nobody. Anyone else wish to speak towards it? Okay, well, I think we should put that to the vote also. So all those councillors in favour? That also is unanimous. Officers, thank you. Now, that brings us to item 6, which is urgent business. So, Ms Weigel, I believe there is no urgent business for tonight's meeting.
No, Mayor, no urgent business.
Thank you. So, item 7 is confidential business. So, we have one item of confidential business to consider tonight. So councillors, do I have a motion that council close the meeting to the public in accordance with the provision of section 66 in brackets 2 of the Local Government Act 2020 to consider item 7.1 being a contract matter? Councillor Buckley.
Consistency, yeah.
Councillor Allen. Oh, sorry, Councillor Cook. You can bring us back. So, all those in favour of us closing the meeting? That's also unanimous. So we just await on our Unanimous also. So let's, Riley, please just let us, are we already back on, are we? No.
We haven't quite finished, Dan. You don't have to drive home, do you?
Thank you. Thank you to those who may still be watching. We have actually now got to the close of the meeting. We've gone through our confidential item. So if there is anyone out there still watching, thank you for your attendance tonight. And the gallery is now empty. So, but I've already thanked those people for coming. But thank you to the officers and thank you to my fellow councillors and the CEO for tonight's meeting. So I would just like to say, I'll do it easier, 9:11 is the close of meeting. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Can I just
Good
say,
night.
Yeah, there were some big, heavy items. Yeah, it was a lot. Big gallery. First time for a big gallery, so